What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is the part 6 of a story where DxD universe reacts to betrayed Villain-Issei. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more information. Now, let's get into part 6. The next day. Issei's room, 7:30 am. Issei and Ingvild were sleeping on the bed. Ingvild was in her lingerie, with her bra and her undergarments covering her private parts. Issei had pulled her closer to himself, her body being the closest to him. Issei had worn regular clothing, as he did not want to do anything to her that he would regret. Ingvild opened her eyes and saw Issei cuddling her like a child. She smiled seeing this side of Issei. She gave a kiss to him on the forehead as she muttered, "I love you, my dragon." She also decided to hug him for a little while, not caring for anyone else that would interrupt their blissful time. She loved her Issei more than anything else and wanted to spend as much time as she can with the man she loved the most. She remembered how she was the only last survivor of her family as they were killed by some remnants of the Cows Brigade a few months ago. She shook her head. What happened was in her past and not today. She had to focus on her tomorrow. She looked at the loving face of her dragon, knowing that he is her tomorrow and she must focus on that. Issei soon woke up as he saw himself cuddling Ingvild. Ingvild had a smile as Issei soon spoke with a grin, "Morning, Heim." Heim was another of the nickname Issei had given Ingvild fairly recently, which causes her to blush since Issei treated her like the princess as she asked, "Are you not going to call me purple-haired diva? If you wish, still have interest in singing?" Ingvild gave a nod. She remembered on how her dream was to become a singer, a pop singer. "In that case, I shall support you in this dream of yours." Ingvild had a blush when she heard Issei say this as she looked away. Issei soon decided to be a little mischievous and kiss her on the cheek, making her beet red. Soon enough, Issei and Ingvild decided to get up and get dressed since if Mary or Arcadia Issei would come, they may end up teasing them. Ingvild headed towards the stand where her clothing was kept as she picked them up and started to wear them. Issei waited for her patiently as the couple decided to get properly dressed for their upcoming events. After a while, Mary came inside as she had a smile on her face. She then spoke happily, "Morning you two." "Morning Mary Nee." Issei spoke with a smile. She soon came inside and decided to settle down with them as she spoke, "Hey Issei-Revan decided to bring someone else to the theater just recently." "Who?" Issei asked with confusion, but seeing the sad smile on his sister's expression as she spoke, "Rainer, he brought her back." "Hey, that's it. It's fine, I knew he would bring her a while later. I mean we have Riaz and Co in the theater right?" Issei spoke with a shrug as he continued, "I could care less if they are here anyway. Is she still the same psychopath that she always is?" "Yeah, she showed me no respect. I put her in her place easily." Mary spoke with a sigh as Issei shook his head and responded, "She deserved that anyway, so you'll be watching another of Concept S pasts." Issei asked, to which Ingvild shook her head and responded, "No, you see the viewing malfunctioned, so Revan has told we will be seeing something else." Issei nodded as he spoke. "I see." Issei and the rest soon finished their food. Mary and Ingvild spoke, "Well, we will be leaving, see you soon." Issei nodded as he grabbed Ingvild by her hand and made out with her in front of his older sister, who couldn't help but secretly take a picture of them. She had a small smile seeing this and knew this would be handy blackmail material. Ingvild became red due to the kiss as she kept her hands on the cheek. Mary soon spoke, "Well, we will be heading there and I will take this lovebird with me." Mary soon grabbed Ingvild and the duo headed out of the room. Just as they did, they were subsequently teleported by Revan back to the theater. Scene change. Revan's theater, 9:30 p.m. Everyone had settled down in the theater as they knew that something was going to happen. Revan soon joined the theater with an additional guest. Ingvild widened her eyes when she saw him. The man was described to be a light purple-haired man with shoulder-length hair, with brown eyes. He wore a formal clothing, which consisted of a black coat, white shirt and black pants. He also wore black shoes. This was Lucius Leviathan, Ingvild's father. Ingvild Leviathan had tears in her eyes. Seeing her dead father come back to life, she immediately rushed to her father and embraced him, who calmed his daughter down. "It's okay Ingvild, your father is not going anywhere." Ingvild kept crying onto him, while Lucius kept calming his daughter down. None spoke too much about it, as they were happy that father and daughter had reunited after so long. "Father, I have something to tell you." "I am." Lucius cuts her off and speaks, "You are the queen of Issei's peerage, and you love him, don't you?" Wait, you know Issei?" Lucius responded with a smile, "Of course, I have been here for a while, and you did not know because you never asked him." The audience was surprised by this revelation. Issei and Lucius knew each other. This made them wonder who else Issei knew. Lucia spoke with a sigh. "Anyways, we should get seated." Ingvild nodded in understanding. Even Ingvild was surprised by this. She wondered where else Issei had gone. The two walked towards where Ingvild was seated before. "Hello Mr. Leviathan," Mary spoke with a respected tone as he looked at her and recognized her. "You must be Mary Hyoudou, his older sister, right?" "It seems my brother spoke about me to you," Mary responded with a smile as Lucia spoke. "Indeed, he spoke a lot about you anyways. It is nice to meet all of you as well." Lucia spoke respectfully as the others nearby nodded to him. The pure-blooded devil was respectful like his daughter, and unlike the rest of the Leviathan clan, who was arrogant, as Azazel commented, "At least you are not like Kateria in any way." Ingvild was about to speak, but Lucius responds, "My distant cousin, well, she was the more arrogant one, believing in the superiority of the elders. That is why she has that attitude. Anyway, we are already past the viewing time, right Revan?" "Indeed, before we begin, here are some things you need to know about this Issei. He is actually something else. A hybrid would be the best way to describe him, and he has a unique skill. He is not the Red Dragon Emperor, and to the supernatural he will appear to be human. But he is strong enough to even deal with the likes of Indra, if push comes to shove." The audience were surprised by this. Office, Lilith and Lucius knew who Revan was talking about, as they have met this Issei. "So what exactly is this Issei?" Azazel was the one to ask, as Revan spoke. "He is a bounty hunter or a mercenary to be short. He does not fight for the factions or for the Cows Brigade. He actually only fights for himself and the money he is offered, nothing more, nothing less." The audience were not certain how to react to this. He is not like concept Issei, but he is different. He was more of a scoundrel to several of the audience. The others had respect for him, as he was making his way in the real world. He was that type of a person. The ones that cared for him knew that he will be different as opposed to their Issei, and they were curious to see how this Issei would be like. "Alright, without further ado, let's get started," Revan spoke as he puts the screening device onto the screen, as a countdown screen is showing. Soon enough, the title screen showed up, that being Issei, the supernatural bounty hunter. The man in his 20s was walking across the field. He was heading to a restaurant. Tall man appearing to be in his 20s with an average build, black hair, golden bangs and black goatee. He wore a knee-length dark blue blazer with a lighter blue dress shirt, a black waistcoat, and a red tie. He wore faded purple slacks and black dress shoes. He entered into a restaurant that was sold snacks and alcoholic drinks. He looked at the place. It was aptly named Izakaya. The good thing was that it was nearby to where he was staying. "This is the place," Azazel muttered as he went inside. "Why is my counterpart here?" Azazel asked with a surprise, as Yusaka spoke with a responsive tone. "I guess you wished to have a drink." "I don't have my drinks here, Yusaka. I always either have them at my place or at Tobio's bar." Tobio agreed with this, as Yusaka nodded in understanding. Revan then responded, "You will know soon enough." As he did so, someone had greeted him. He was described to be a blonde-haired boy with blue eyes. He wore spectacles. He wore a casual winter jacket with white on the outside and black on the inside. Underneath it, he wore a formal clothing which included a white shirt, a blue tie and black pants. "Welcome to Izakaya, sir. What can I get for you?" The blonde teen greeted with a smile as Azazel spoke. "Take me to Issei, John. I have some business with him." "Very well, Azazel." The now identified John spoke with a bow, as he decided to lead him to the way where Issei was. He opened the door where Issei was seated. It seemed to be an elegant Victorian-style era study room. "I'd say this Issei has interesting taste," Arthur commented with respect, seeing Issei's choice of a room. It was well decorated with several books and other paintings. It also had a proper desk. "And judging by the room, I'd say my little brother is quite successful, isn't he?" Mary asked with intrigue as Revan responded. "Indeed, he is also called the bounty hunter, with a 100% success rate, meaning he gets the job done, no matter what happens." The audience were surprised by this level of Issei's powers, while they feared what he would do if he were to hunt them down due to his bounties. "And who is this boy John?" Ajuka asked as he knew there was no one named John in their world. As Revan spoke, "His past will be revealed soon enough. Let's just say it was a roller coaster of a past to say the least." The audience were even more excited to see what this story would show them and how it will unfold. They wondered what else will be revealed as the story progresses. Soon enough, Azazel saw a man in his 20s sitting on the desk. He is a tall, muscular man with mid-length straight black hair that reaches to his ears. His eyes are green. He wore a tight-fitting short-sleeved shirt, sports tan baggy training pants with a black belt weaved through the waist and black martial arts slippers. "Hey old man, it's been a while." Azazel grew a tick mark due to being called old man, due to his age, as Azazel sighed and spoke. "Been a while, Issei." "That's Issei." Ingvild spoke with a surprised look as she had a red tint seeing his body, knowing that this Issei may also grow to this size. However, she was not the only one. Even Valerie, LeFay, Yusaka and Elmenhold were in a daze seeing his body. Their lover looked really something. Indeed, this Issei is much older than the one in your reality, but regardless, he is pretty strong. If his muscles were not a giveaway, RageRevan spoke with a smile, as he could see that the four-mentioned were not the only ones that were his love interest. Even some others had the same expression. This included Sakura, who had a red tint across her face, Sona Citri, Penemu and Tsubasa Yura, they all had a red flustered look on their cheeks. Griselda and Gabriel shook their heads in disbelief, while thinking, must not thinking about naughty thoughts, must not think about naughty thoughts. Mary gave a nod of approval seeing her brother like this. She knew that this version of her brother would be getting a lot of girls by seeing his physique alone. She smiled at the thought of having a lot of sister-in-laws. Some of the men were intimidated by his physique, others amongst the male audience respected his physique, which included Thor and Sayer to name a few. They wanted to know his workout physique and wondered if he was willing to share them something in the future. Rainer was in utter and complete disbelief seeing Issei like this. She couldn't imagine someone she hated looked this hot. Similar thoughts were in Tiamat as well. Riaz and her peerage along with Irina, Ravel, Asia, Roswis and Zenobia and those that did not care much about Issei were in disbelief that Issei would be this successful or good-looking. They were reminded even more of what they lost and what they cannot receive. Ryu and Aika were intimidated by seeing his physique. Ryu wanted to have a body like that sometime in the future. Similar thoughts were in Mickey and Goru as they wondered how Issei even reached a level of this physique. Gunu and those from Volley Team minus Kuroka and Team Slashdog gave their approval for this level of physique. Some like Kauki and Tobio were curious to hear about his training regimen to reach this level of strength. Well, I have a job for you, are you interested? Azazel asked Issei, to which he motioned John to close the door. As he did so, Issei looked at Azazel and spoke, well shoot, go ahead. I want you to eliminate Kakabiel, he has been quite the problem. He is one of my strongest underlings and he desires to restart the Great War. His base is in Kuo, the town where both Devil Heiress are present. They are the siblings of the Devil Kings, Lucifer and Leviathan. He pretty much keeps them as hostages without them knowing, and any action from our side, he will dispose of them, which will trigger the Great War. He will use this as an opportunity for his war-filled actions. Since both Lucifer and Leviathan are very attached to their siblings, they will have the motivation to do so. Azazel explained seriously, to which Issei nodded as he responded with a frustrated look. So why are they even here, in the human world? Issei asked, to which Azazel spoke with a sigh, hell if I know, they both seem to be interested in the human world. None of them said anything, they knew this happened in their reality as well, and with Kakabiel still imprisoned, he won't be posing a problem. Both Serziches and Seraphil glared at Rainer, causing her to shiver in fear. And Lem guess, he has not taken them down because he has not found a way to involve the angels. Azazel nodded in agreement as he spoke. Right on the money, this is why I need you. You need to eliminate all the rogue fallen angels that are affiliated with him, as well as take him down. That is why I need you to be heading to Kuo. Her name is Rainer, and she is with 3 other fallen angels. They somehow got their hands on the exiled nun Asia Argento, and they stole the sacred gear removal devices before they left Grigori. I think you know what will happen. Then Issei nodded in understanding as he knew what he must do. He will certainly deal with them effortlessly. Several of the audience glared at Rainer, who was even more shivering due to fear. Not only her counterpart will have to deal with this monster version of Issei, but there is a high chance she will not survive this encounter. You damned monster, Rainer muttered underneath her breath while looking down. She was the most scared of this Issei. So when will they do it? Or are they already done with it? Issei asked, to which Azazel responded, you only have an hour or 2 before the ritual begins. They need a ton of magical energy, as well as to reach 12 AM for it to begin, so you still have time to deal with them. I see, so what do you want me to bring them, warm or bring them cold? Azazel responded to Issei's question, I would like it if you bring them warm and not cold. Well, I am afraid it is going to charge you extra. Issei spoke with a shrug as Azazel sighed, you haven't changed, have you? You have always put money first over morality anyway. Typical of a bounty hunter who was always successful in his mission. The successful bounty hunter. Some of the audience frowned at Issei's personality. He seemed to be a bit greedy for his own well-being, however they decided to keep their mouth shut, knowing that people are hearing them. Azazel had a foreboding feeling that Issei is going to suck him dry of his funds. What can I say? I am a simple man making his way through this world. Issei spoke with a smirk as he stood up. He started to walk towards the painting as he spoke. I accept this deal, so you want them dead or alive? I would love it if they were alive, but knowing you, you wish for them dead, right? Issei shook his head and spoke, can't say anything, I hold no grudges towards anyone. To me a job is a job, personal feelings always come second, no matter what happens. I see, I would rather have them alive then, but if they are dead, that also works. Azazel spoke with a shrug as he understood that she was at his mercy. Issei then grinned in response as he spoke, sure, I wouldn't mind, and considering you will pay me extra for keeping her alive, sure. Rainer felt like she was completely screwed. She looked towards Azazel, who did not have any sympathy for him. She knew she was again at Issei's mercy. But how will we deal with the crack elf? Issei asked, to which Azazel chuckled in response, at the nickname, with John looking at the scene amused, to which Azazel spoke, you may not like this one, but you will have to infiltrate Kuo as a teacher of Kuo Academy, and judging by your age, I'd say that you would be perfect. Well, I am technically 23, so that is not an issue, so I'd be a PE teacher, right? Azazel nodded in response to Issei's words, as he spoke, indeed, and if you want, Blonde over there can also join. Sure, well, I'd get going, let's get this party started, and before I go, if those heiresses be a problem, I will deal with them. Personally, Azazel sighed as he spoke, even the strongest Devil King and his wife couldn't stop you, so nobody in the Devil faction would are to get in your way, but please, for both of us, try to keep a low profile. Deal? Issei nodded in response, as he gave Azazel a strong handshake. The deal was accepted between Issei and Azazel. Well, Rainer is done for, Mary commented as she could see her fearful look. She had no sympathy for Rainer. Rainer was constantly shivering. She wanted to not see herself die. She has already experienced death, and she does not want to do so. Surziches and Grafia were concerned on what Issei would do to Riaz if she gets on his nerves. They wouldn't be surprised if she is taught a permanent lesson. Serafel could only hope Sona does not get on his nerves, as he wouldn't hesitate to deal with the heiresses if they become a problem. Sona and Riaz only could hope that Issei does not come after them. Seeing concept Issei, they knew that Issei was not someone they wanted to cross or mess with. Riaz and her peerage were fearful of this. Issei. Something on your mind, Zaz? Issei asked Azazel, seeing him concerned state as he spoke. Your senses are sharp, of course you would come to know. I was thinking maybe we will achieve true peace after so long. That makes sense, after all God and the Devil Kings are dead, so that can happen. Azazel was surprised by this as he asked, how did you know of this? Wait, God's death is not made public. Azazel shook his head as he spoke, I have my sources, let's leave it at that. Many of the audience unfamiliar with this were stunned by this revelation, while the leaders of the leaders' factions were silent upon this. This included many of the people that were in the leaders' meetings. They looked at their leaders who did not know what to say to their people. And if you are wondering why it was kept a secret, it was to prevent any attack from the other pantheons like the Norse or Greek back then. The others present understood this, and they did not judge that too much. However, some still felt slightly betrayed by this revelation, but understood this. Anyhow, that still does not explain you, Issei Hyoudou, a being with no supernatural background or known sacred gear. But you alone pose a giant threat to the supernatural, seeing that you killed the so-called untouchable god, Balder, as well as took down Surziches and Grafia and defeated them both. My question is how? Issei only chuckled as he spoke. Everyone has a weakness, Zaz. Once you find that out, exploit it and it gets the job done. That is how I was able to take down Balder, Issei then continued while shaking his head. As for fighting against those two, they were behind me because I killed some of their devils. They just wanted revenge because I killed one of their clan heads for some money. Azazel narrowed his eyes upon hearing this. Nothing made any sense as to why a human can slay a god and defeat the strongest devil queen and strongest devil all by himself. He received the reports that confirmed the person was a human. Many minor deities have fallen to the young man whose name only Azazel knew of. But because of Balder's public news of Balder's death, he was nicknamed by many pantheons the supernatural bounty hunter. The Norse pantheon was stunned by the fact that Issei, who was supposed to be a human in their eyes, managed to kill a god. The Norse were devastated by this reveal. The others were completely stunned. A mere human was able to kill a god. They couldn't imagine what else he is capable of. The ones that supported Issei did not know how to react to this iteration of Issei. Well, he was not as destructive as his concept evil counterpart. He can go up to such lengths. If you have a bounty on your head, he will find a way to find, locate and kill you. No matter what happens. He will kill you when you are asleep or when you don't expect it. Regardless, he will get the job done. This includes for some artifacts or other valuables that gods or dragons possess. He will eliminate anyone that gets in his way. Azazel knew keeping the information about him was a bad move. But he knew better than to try and plan something against Issei. It would be his end. He saw Issei having a smirk towards him. Relax, Oz, as long as there is no bounty on your head, you will be alive. Azazel nodded in understanding as Issei continued. That aside, when it comes to you making peace and shit, I ain't interested. I only care about money to survive, nothing more, nothing less. Not war or peace. So remember that before thinking I will work with you. Azazel nodded in understanding as Issei looked at John, and they both soon left from this place. As soon as Azazel turned around, both went missing as Azazel sighed and teleported out of the place. It was a risky move, but the risk hopefully will be rewarded. Azazel knew that this was something he may have normally done. It felt like he must have been really desperate and had no choice. It was making a final gambit and it succeeded. He could only hope that things would get better. The audience did not know how to react. His actions were akin to how true bounty hunters reacted. The factions knew that as long as they are not on this Issei's bounty, they should be fine. The scene changed to the duo at the church looking at the fight that had happened. As John and Issei looked at the scene, in amusement, they could see Riaz eliminating the fallen angels that were outside, with her power of destruction. Rainer gritted her teeth in anger, remembering what happened to Kalwerner, Mitlet and Donasik. A part of her regretted ever crossing paths with Issei at this point, and now they were gone. Azazel took a subtle glance at her and shook his head in disappointment at her actions. So this is the power of destruction? John asked Issei, to which he looked at him and nodded. Yes, but that is something only an amateur would do. She has much to learn if she needs to become better. Issei spoke with a disappointed tone. You seem like you talk from experience. Issei looked at John and responded, cause I have seen and learned from it. I have seen bigger and better. For someone to be the Lucifer's sister, she did not match my expectations. Even if I did not expect it to be on par with her brother's level. Issei spoke with a tone of disappointment and annoyance, as he knew her defeating the Fallen is not a big deal with this amateur level skill. Riaz looked down in shame and sadness. It seemed like Issei did have a higher expectations for her skill at that time, as Surziches looked at her and sighed, as he muttered. I should be angry, but I really can't. Surziches would have been normally angry at this level of insult, but Issei was nowhere wrong. She never properly came to train with him that time, and that caused a lot of problems. Many of the others agreed with Issei's assessment of the situation, as they knew that he was far from wrong. John, can you make sure this hybrid does not intervene? John nodded as Issei spoke. I'ma deal with one of the dragons here, along with a cat, a knight and the devil heiress herself, and if this Rainer is good enough, I may consider sparing her. John nodded, as he stayed back. Issei headed out to deal with the situation. He knew what was going to happen, grinning maniacally. He was certainly going to enjoy this. When he came here, he could sense the place reeked of devils and other supernatural beings like the cat and two dragons that were there here. Riaz, Akeno, Kiba, Kaneko and Rainer shuddered on what Issei has planned for them. Rainer could only hope she is spared from Issei. She hoped that she is good enough for him. The others' audience wondered who is the other dragon Issei talked about, given the first has to be Genshiro Saji. Inside the church, Issei could see a woman with black hair and a sexy body was smiling sadistically as she watched the blonde nun that was crucified to some cross device. It's about time, the woman spoke, as she knew what was going to happen next. Asia shuddered, remembering her past. It felt like a walk down memory lane, as her friends and loved ones were consoling her and calming her down. Rainer wondered what would happen. She knew that if Issei sees her worthy, she may survive. She looked at her hand and still saw the flower bracelet. She forgot it was there in her left hand for all this while. Why do I still have this? Rainer thought as she continued watching the scene. However, just as they were about to perform the ritual, someone crashed onto the scene. They were Yudo Kiba, Kaneko Taoju and Mitsuda. They were the Gremory Devils. Wait a minute, don't tell me that. Azazel spoke with horror as Revan nodded. Yes, Mitsuda is the Red Dragon Emperor in this world. The audience did not know how to react to this timeline. This was something that had never happened before, and it wouldn't have happened again. They wondered how Mitsuda would have been, since he would be the new pillar of this world. Riaz and her peerage took it the worst. Unlike Issei, Mitsuda was only seen by them as a pervert and a jock, nothing more, nothing less. They hated this sort of development. This even included the former members as well. You three are too late. The woman yelled, but her eyes widened when a sudden blur headed towards her direction, as in a single moment behind her, the device broke down as Asia was gone. What? The woman exclaimed. What happened? The jock asked with a surprised tone, as he was unable to see what happened. Asia was soon down on the ground next to them. Kiba then added, I don't know. Kiba suddenly replied as suddenly another blur passed through them again, as when they saw a whole load of bodies dropped on the floor dead, which were the bodies of excommunicated exorcists. They saw right in front of them. The blur stopped showing Issei with the woman Rainer passed out on his shoulder, as he held a katana in his hand while speaking. Her breasts are good, and her ass is alright. She is above passable in my book. The audience were surprised by how quickly this Issei dismantled the situation. Riaz was left agape. Normally she would say that Issei is perverted or something like that, but seeing what he has done, she did not say much. Mary sighed seeing this. She was surprised like the others, but it seemed like both she and her brother were perverted. The major difference being Mary was a closet pervert, while Issei was an open pervert. Ingvild felt a little jealous seeing Rainer being complimented, so were those girls that loved and cared for their Issei. Rainer sighed in relief that she was being kept alive this time. However, she felt a bit offended that her breasts were just good and her ass is just alright. She believed she was far above that. Some like Azazel and Auden were silently chuckling seeing Issei rating Rainer like this. They also had to give Issei an agreement that she was good enough for being kept alive in Issei's book. Well, I will be taking her, you can have fun with your nun, or whatever. Issei spoke with a dismissive tone as he left. When he was gone, the trio looked around as Mitsuda asked, what should we do? We should inform President immediately about what happened. Kiba tried to call his master. But much to his surprise, she did not pick up, and after a moment Kiba got worried. She isn't picking up. Kaneko's eyes widened with horror as she spoke. President and Akeno-senpai are upstairs. Her words made Mitsuda horrified. They are perhaps with that strong-looking guy. Mitsuda yelled with horror as he carried Asia and ran upstairs with her in his arms. Kaneko and Kiba ran alongside him as they walked up their stairs and saw their master and queen talking with a man and another blonde person. This is not going to end well. Surzicha spoke with horror, concerned for his little sister, as Venelana spoke with fear. This Ria's got in the way of someone that was able to take your counterpart down. I fear what will happen to her. Honey, let's hope that she will be fine. Ziosada spoke with concern. He could only hope they survive this variant of Issei. Well, Riaz and her peerage were shuddered seeing what would happen. Sorry, I couldn't stop the crow. John spoke with an apologetic tone, as Akeno grew a tick mark when she was called that as Issei spoke. No matter, I will take care of this. Issei looked towards Riaz, who demanded him. I said, hand over the fallen angel. And if I don't? What will you do? Go to your big brother, saying Ani-chan, this bad man beat me up. Issei spoke with a mocking tone. As Riaz got irritated by this, she then retorted, I won't bother my brother with this. Riaz stated, making Issei chuckle. Right, cause he ain't recovered from our last scuffle, Issei replied, making Riaz confused as he spoke. It matters not anyway, since she is coming with me. No. Hand her over now. Riaz demanded while flaring her aura. Akeno also followed suit, but she seemed more intimidated. She had faced against John, and he was evenly matched. The only reason she even reached here was because she was able to trick him. Riaz and Akeno gulped in fear at what their counterparts are doing. They feared them even more, as they knew this Issei was cold and merciless. Their loved ones could only hope they survive. Blind arrogance runs in the family, it seems, Issei muttered as he handed Rainer's passed out body to John as he held it. Hold it for a while. Issei spoke to him as he nodded. He then looked coldly and spoke. I've told you twice before, I'm not here for you or any little devil. My job is to bring this crow, and I have decided to deliver her in one piece, so you have a choice, either leave me be or you will regret it, Issei warned as he cracked his fists. He did not mind dancing with the Gremory peerage. The other devils were afraid, walked up while hearing Issei, afraid of what might happen. Riaz on the other hand, her eye twitched due to the insult. She fired a power of destruction blast towards Issei, who just flicked it with his hands like it was nothing. What? Riaz yelled in surprise as Issei just smirked. In a mere moment, he appeared towards Riaz and grabbed her leg. He then slammed her on the ground over and over again, until she was bleeding. Her clothes were partially destroyed. She soon passed out, groaning in pain. Riaz was pale seeing her condition, while her loved ones were horrified by what they were witnessing. Issei was utterly merciless, and they knew what was going to happen. The other peerage members and their loved ones feared what will happen to their counterparts. Foolish, just like your brother, Issei spoke with disappointment as Mitsuda charged at him, yelling, Riaz. The boosted gear announced in tandem, boost. Mitsuda was ready to punch him in the face. Don't you dare. Mitsuda was cut off when Issei had held his hand and looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Is that all? I expected more, Issei spoke honestly before chuckling. You seem new here, word of advice, don't go blindly or else this happens. Issei gave a hard punch to Mitsuda's face, which sends him back to the basement, knocked out with most likely a concussion. Kiba looked shocked as he narrowed his eyes and dashed at Issei with a demonic sword as he blocked it with a single finger. Huh. Issei yawned at his face, after which he spoke. Sword birth, huh. Issei destroyed the sword, startling him as he continued, the sacred gear that create demonic swords with different unique abilities. But you are still an amateur at using it. Keep training, and one day you may create a sword that can hurt someone powerful. Little Knight, Issei said before punching Kiba's chest over and over again, damaging his ribcage. Issei followed up with a kick that sent him flying towards the statue pedestal, knocking him unconscious. Kiba was pale seeing himself like this, however he had to consider Issei's words. He knew what this meant. He needed to train, as he noted what Issei has spoken. Now Akeno and Kaneko were worried on what Issei would do to him. Now do you two wish to dance like them, or do you have brains? Issei spoke while walking towards them as Akeno and Kaneko shuddered at what Issei had just done to 3 of their members. He walked towards Akeno, who was trembling with fear, as she shook her head no. We don't want to fight. Akeno replied while shaking. Issei narrowed his eyes a bit before grinning towards her. He then leaned close next to her ear. Perhaps not fighting with hands, but maybe in bed. I can tell you're getting off on this, you slut. Issei whispered, but he knew that the catgirl can hear this. Not that he cared. Akeno in the audience herself couldn't help but feel turned on by this Issei's intimidating attitude. The audience turned to her and gave the looks of surprise seeing her like this. Araquiel and Suzaku felt a bit embarrassed by this side of Akeno. No matter which universe she is in, she will always be a sadomasochist. He simply stood up and gave Akeno's ass a good smack as Akeno yelped in response. He then walked back to John and a passed out Rainer. John looked at Issei with a questionable look. Issei then spoke, "Don't be like that once you go there for your vacation. Do tell me if you are able to do this to some of your girls." Issei muttered to John, who could only sigh seeing his mentor's attitude knowing what he meant. He took Rainer from John and swung her back on his shoulder. He and John then walked out of the church as he spoke. "Oh yeah. Forgot to tell you, I will be attending the school. So tell the other devil in charge that I'm here for a job and not for a trouble. See you around, devils." Issei informed before they left the church. Akeno was speechless at what Issei did. It seemed like he was a pervert even in this reality. She knew that this was a traitor her counterpart had to accept. She could only hope that her counterpart is not stupid like she was. Sona and the devils that attended Kuo wondered what developments will happen. They could only hope that they don't do something stupid. "What should we do, Akeno?" Kaneko asked after sighing with relief once the two men left. As Akeno responded, "We need to get them healed up immediately. I'll inform Sona of what happened as well," Akeno stated as she called Sona Citri of what happened. The audience wondered what will happen next, as they knew that Issei and this John attending their school would be something. The scene changes to Azazel's apartment, which was open. The duo head inside without even knocking as Azazel was busy playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, with him trying out the YE Rainbow Road course, which was now in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. "Issei. Can't you knock?" and "John, couldn't you stop him from entering?" Azazel complained as Issei just walked in and dropped Rainer's body onto the ground. "Gee, talk about lack of respect," Mary commented as Lucia spoke. "He is like that, you can't help it." Rainer felt offended with the way this Issei treated her counterpart, while Azazel was more interested in the new booster course pack that was in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Revan looked at him and remembered something that was in his mind. "If you'd locked the door, I would have." Issei replied as he walked over the fridge and took out 3 beer bottles. He gave one to John and sat down on one of the couches, with John sitting nearby. He removed one of the beer caps with his teeth, while John used a near beer cap opener before chugging it down completely. Issei handed the other to Azazel, who sighed and sat down as well. The duo were drinking their beer slowly. "He has got some really amazing alcohol tolerance," Vider commented as the Asgardians present noted this, with Auden speaking. "Although it would be better if he enjoyed the beer, in my opinion. So where is my pay for her?" Azazel pointed to Rainer as he spoke. "It is laying by your feet." Issei was left confused as John was also equally surprised by this. Rainer was left dumbfounded that Azazel would do this to her, while Azazel only shrugged thinking this was a better option for her. "Really? She is my pay?" Issei asked, not impressed by what he heard. Rainer felt offended by this. She was not happy with how Issei did not see much value within her. "Hey. She is very well looking for a fallen angel and has basic skills such as cooking, cleaning and doing chores. She is also a decent strategist. I thought that it would be perfect since I was going to excommunicate her for what she had done, but I thought she would make a good assistant for you." Issei rolled his eyes in response as he spoke. "I already have 2 stronger assistants with me, if you are wondering." I know, but what is the harm in keeping another one?" Azazel asked with intrigue as Issei sighed. "Sure, why not?" Rainer was surprised that Azazel would stand by her, as Azazel gave a side glance while thinking. "I hope this viewing teaches you the lesson you deserve." The others wondered who those 2 assistants were, as they knew that they are Issei's helpers that were in this world. They did not know what relationship Issei had with them. "Fine, her ass and breasts are fat enough, so that's good enough in my book," Issei muttered such that no one could hear, "but she is weak. Can't you put her through some training program first to boost her strength?" "I don't want to babysit her for being too weak," Issei asked, making John sigh and Azazel roll his eyes. "Fine, as long as you do your job in Kuo. I'll train her, so she isn't useless to you." Azazel accepted Issei's proposal. As Issei gave him a thumbs up, he then looked towards the passed out Rainer and spoke. "Now time to wake her up." Azazel snapped her fingers as Rainer woke up with a jolt. "Oh Lord Azazel?" Rainer asked in shock as Azazel just scoffed and spoke coldly. "Silence, Rainer. You went behind my back to try and obtain a sacred gear from an exiled nun by using one of my sacred gear removal devices in the territory of the Sister Devil Kings. I had to send my client to stop you before you could possibly start a war. Because of what you did, you are no longer part of Grigori anymore. From now on you are Issei's personal servant over here for the rest of your life." Azazel said straightforwards and with a cold tone, as Rainer seemed sad, but she knew she fucked up by going behind Azazel's back. She swallowed her pride and spoke. "I understand, Lord Azazel." Rainer was relieved. Her counterpart was in a better state than she was in. She could only hope that things would become better. The audience were surprised by this development, while Mary was weary of Rainer, knowing what she had done to Issei. Good, now Issei. Anything else you want to discuss? Azazel spoke with a more casual tone, as Issei just shrugged his shoulders. Not really, just train the girl when I'm school. Or something, I really don't care. But I want her home when I'm done. Issei replied as he and John walked towards the door with Rainer following him. See ya. Issei left with the duo, as Azazel looked at the door with a smirk. Like killing two birds with one stone. Now back to playing Mario Kart. Azazel returned to playing Mario Kart. Wow, I would be surprised, never thought you would be the matchmaker, Yasaka commented with slight jealousy, as Azazel could only shrug. However, internally he was a bit scared seeing Yasaka glaring at him along with the other girls, as RageRevan clapped, garnering everyone's attention. Alright everyone, since this chapter, I have decided to give you all something. RageRevan snapped his fingers as everyone in the audience had inventory boxes in front of them. As RageRevan explained, this is infinite inventory. To access it, just say inventory and you will be able to view this screen in front of you. Say inventory again and it will go away. And one more thing, only the owner of the inventory can view their inventory, no one else will. RageRevan snapped his fingers as it all went away. Surziches then asked, why give us this? Because you all will be getting gifts from now on, so that is why I gave all of you this. RageRevan snapped his fingers as he then looked at Azazel and spoke. Azazel, check your inventory. Azazel nodded as he commanded. Inventory. Azazel could see that his inventory was no longer empty, as RageRevan spoke. You have a Nintendo Switch with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, with the booster courses already unlocked, and a bottle of beer with you. Now say the item name. Alright, beer. A beer bottle now came in Azazel's hand, surprising him and everyone else present, with Mary commenting, it is the same beer your counterpart used. Azazel nodded as he could see the inventory space where the beer bottle was present was completely gone, as RageRevan explained. Now this is how the inventory works. You will gain the same items that your counterpart has used in any way, except for a certain few, no one, but you will have access to the items present in the inventories, so enjoy. Azazel gave a smile in response, as some of the guests remained a bit jealous of Azazel, however they knew that they would be getting their chance soon enough. Alright, time for the next viewing. Alright, before we begin, I have two people to introduce you to. RageRevan snapped his fingers as one more guest appeared. Ajuka and those from the Devils immediately recognized her. She was a beautiful girl with almond eyes with long blonde hair with blue hair tips, as she has a voluptuous body and large breasts, whose proportions are similar to Ria's. She wears a noble-like dress while holding an elegant folding fan. The second person was described to be like an older version of Ravel Phoenix, a beautiful blonde-haired young woman, with her hair tied in long twintails and blue eyes, as well as a voluptuous figure. She is seen dressed in the female school uniform. Ravel was pale when she saw her, while Riser looked at her and shook his head. He knew that she was going to come here sooner or later. Welcome Leisha. Claire Phoenix. Leisha was surprised, while Claire was not. She knew who it was that was in front of him. Who are you then? Apologies, my name is RageRevan and it is nice to meet you. Leisha nodded, albeit she was confused as to why she was brought here. If you are wondering, I brought you here because to show you that the multiverse is real. You will be watching different iterations of Issei. Okay, but why him? I am not insulting him or anything, just out of curiosity. Leisha spoke as RageRevan shook his head, knowing that she shares some traits with Ajuka. As he spoke, instead of explaining, here, let me send you the information you need to know. Leisha was stunned for a moment as she had a burst of information inserted into her head. She looked at the girls with a disappointed look. It seems like she has gotten ahead of herself due to her pride. Well, it is her loss. I am not going to yell or get angry for what she has done. This is her screw up, and there is nothing that is going to change the fact that Issei no longer cares for you. I mean, he does not care for her, right? Leisha looks at RageRevan, who speaks. No, none at all. He has lost any and all love for the girls that betrayed him. The mentioned girls started to look down in shame or sadness as Claire spoke. I have already met him, and thankfully, he is doing well. Lucius did not say anything. He knew about Claire, and another being amongst the first few who met Issei. He wondered how the audience would react when they would come to know that she was one of the first that met Issei, especially the fallen angel side of the factions. The others were surprised, especially Mary, who was equally surprised. She needed to ask either of them, since Mary and Claire have a history together due to them attending the same college in USA. Although, Ravel, stay away from him. He has made it clear he does not want to do anything with you or the rest of the Grimmery girls. Claire spoke coldly, making Ravel and the other girls shudder at this. She was crying with Claire walking away from her. Riser couldn't help but give a disappointed sigh towards her. She soon walked towards where Lucius was sitting as she got a surprise. Mary. I never knew you were here. Mary smiled in response, seeing her classmate and good friend present. As she spoke, I was present, although I never knew you and my little brother are acquainted. Well, we are more than just acquainted, Claire thought. It was no secret she developed feelings for him, but she had kept it hidden for Ravel's sake. She wanted to confess, but she feared that Issei may reject her. She will do it the next time she sees him. Me and Lucius and another actually met before. I am actually surprised Issei never expected us to be good friends. Imagine the look when I actually revealed this to him. Mary chuckled in response as she spoke. I can only imagine. Speaking of which, who is this another? That person will reveal themselves soon enough. I and Lucius were asked to keep it a secret. Mary pouted in response, along with some of the ones present close to her. Meanwhile, Laisha settled down near the four Satans and greeted her uncle, who returned the greeting. Claire settled down near Mary. While the audience wondered who was this another that Claire mentioned, Mary herself wondered who that person was. Alright, let us begin the viewing. RageRevan started the viewing as the screen started to be playing. Issei, John and the now newly servant Rainer were walking towards their home as Issei asked, "So your name's Rainer? Not bad for a fallen angel." Issei spoke casually, making Rainer look up in surprise. "What do you mean not bad? Mine was chosen by the biblical God himself." Issei rolled his eyes when Rainer told him like that as he spoke. "Geez, take it as a compliment, girl. Don't get your thonger feathers in a twist. I've met a bunch of female fallen angels, but you have a better name than most of them." Rainer blinked her eyes twice when she heard that as she looked away. When the two overtook him, she ran away. Rainer had a red tint when she heard this, but it only lasted for a moment. She hid it so that no one of the audience could see that. "It seems like no matter which universe, Issei is the Riz god." Biku muttered, to which Arthur nodded in agreement. He could see his sister fuming a bit in jealousy seeing this. "So what even is your name, Muscle Man? You look like you are from Japan. And as far as I know, not even that Jock Mitsuda had a body like that. No one I know from this place does." Rainer spoke with a tone of surprise, to which Issei responded. "The name is Issei and you're right, I am from Japan, but I am kind of unique in a way." Issei spoke with a shrug. "I got no sacred gear or a magical prowess, nothing. Just some random dude with a shit ton of artifacts meant to deal with the supernatural." "You're fully human? I thought you were some kind of hybrid." Issei shook his head and responded, "You are close, babe. Although I am still human, my body has been altered and experimented on. That was how I was able to reach this level. I am no ordinary human, cause unlike them I am much stronger than them, as well as I am kind of immortal." "Wait, what? My brother was experimented?" Mary asked with shock, with even the rest of the audience being shocked by this as RageRevan spoke. "Yes, and he will reveal what has happened to him soon enough." In this viewing itself, many felt bad for this Issei. Those that cared for this Issei were devastated by this. They wondered who would experiment him, while they also wondered where his parents were. "Altered? I don't understand. How can this be? I can't sense anything from him. Is he even real?" Rainer looked at him in surprise as Issei looked at her and spoke. "I'm very much real, babe." "Are you some sort of telepath?" Rainer asked, surprised, to which Issei shook his head and spoke. "I told you I have nothing. It's just many have the same thoughts when trying to figure me out. To put it best, let's just say I am a special case," Issei said vaguely as he brought out a cigar and a lighter. He lit up the lighter and started to smoke. Some of the audience frowned at Issei smoking, while the others did not care, knowing it was his life and they had no argument there. "You don't mind, do you?" Rainer puffed in response. "Of course not." Rainer replied as Issei spoke while making a puff out of smoke. "We are here. This is where you live?" Rainer asked with a shocked tone as he spoke. "Indeed, my bounties allowed me to buy this. Like majority of my bounties are in 50 million. One of the highest was Nezha, which was a $10 billion, so it was not a problem for me to buy and maintain this luxury." The audience were surprised and enamored by this. This mansion must have costed millions of bucks, and the best part, it was near the seaside, meaning Issei could visit the beach anytime he wanted to do so. Additionally, the fact that this Issei killed gods and minor deities made him into a millionaire. They could only hope they are not in Issei's bounty. They feared what would happen if Issei was to get a bounty for them. "They even killed Nezha. Can I ask you something, RageRevan?" Auden asked with surprise, to which RageRevan responded, "Yes." "How much was he paid for killing this universe's Balder?" RageRevan thought for a moment as he responded. "He was paid $100 billion for killing him, although I won't reveal who contracted him and told to kill him." The Norse pantheon was shocked. $100 billion is a lot of money. Regardless, this Issei killed someone invaluable to them. They could only pray for what their counterparts were feeling at the moment. Let's head inside," Issei and the others headed inside as he asked, "So what was your idea to go after the nun's gear anyway?" "I was tired of staying in the lower ranks, so I guess obtaining a sacred gear which was rare would increase my ranks." Rainer admitted it as she continued. "When I heard about excommunicated nun with twilight healing, I couldn't help but find myself be tempted to get myself the power. However, it was difficult, so I talked with Lord Kakabiel about it and he agreed. He stole one of the sacred gear removal devices in return that I aided him in the war. I agreed, and when I brought my team here to Kuo, I wanted to prevent any fallen angel to stop us. I was just waiting for my moment, but Lord Azazel saw through my plans and now I'm your servant. Raynor explained with a sigh, as John added. Azazel gritted his teeth in anger, remembering how Kakabiel was majorly responsible, along with Sentinel, for turning many of the fallen angels to the side of war instead of peace. The others tried to calm him down. Raynor did not deny anything as she nodded in agreement. She knew her counterpart was not wrong in this anyway. Moving up the social ladder, huh? Not a bad plan, but terrible execution. If you had waited longer you could have gained the boosted gear for yourself, which despite Azazel's idea for peace even he couldn't turn away something like that, but now you have nowhere to go, right? John spoke with a shrug and a blunt attitude which made Raynor growl in response. Azazel couldn't deny it, the boosted gear was too valuable. Regardless, he refused to believe that his counterpart would abandon everything he has worked for a longinus. Yeah, I guess I lost taking the risk, huh? Raynor spoke while swallowing her pride, as Issei walked towards the doorbell and rang it once. So what do you desire, power or popularity? Power, obviously, it's just that with more power you gain more fame. I was just tired of dealing with constantly being looked down upon for being a low class, so that is why I wanted to gain power. Issei nodded in understanding as John could relate to Raynor to some extent, even he had a desire for power when he first met Issei. He shook his head remembering more of his past did not define who he is today. The audience were even more curious on what was John's past is like and what caused him to work with Issei. Since you desire power, I have a proposal for you. Would you? Issei was unable to complete when someone opened the door. She was described to be a woman whose beauty exuded that of many. She had creamy skin that seemed softer than wool, had deep blue eyes and a beautiful expression that exuded serenity, and she gave a mystical aura. She had long light blue hair that moved freely until it reached her waist. It looked silky and shiny, which added to the beauty of her body. She wore a fantasy-made outfit. Welcome back, Master. Issei rolled his eyes and responded, how many times I have told you, Tia, no need to call me master. Tiamat was left agape, seeing herself as a servant, let alone Issei's servant. She gritted her teeth in embarrassment seeing the situation of her counterpart. Crom was laughing his ass off seeing the strongest dragon king in this position, much to her embarrassment. The rest of the audience were left agape, with everyone seeing her in a maid's costume, as Tiamat managed to ask in an embarrassed tone. How did I become a servant of him? Everyone looked at Tiamat, who had asked the question, as Revan spoke while pausing the viewing. One of his bounty hunting missions, his goal was to gain a jewel that was located hidden from everyone. The contractor paid him $20 million. Issei managed to locate the jewel, which made him come face to face with Tiamat herself, who was not happy, given how dragons protect their treasures more than anything else. However, Issei defeated her, and after which he took the jewel, but this side of Issei attracted her, and she saw him as his mate. Tiamat was left even more surprised and embarrassed by this. She now had red on her cheeks. I wish I could take a picture of this. Crom spoke while stifling his laughter as Tiamat was left agape. She then shouted, don't you dare. The audience were still trying to process this information. Those that liked Issei were jealous of Tiamat being in this position, being so close to Issei. As she is Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon and the strongest Dragon King. Raynor stuttered with fear as Tiamat smiled gracefully in response as she looked at Issei and spoke, I can't help it, you defeated me, meaning I am yours. Issei gave an exasperated sigh as he remembered his defeat during one of his bounty missions. Ever since she has been trying to hound him for his virginity, but Issei is too busy with his missions and always came home exhausted. Maybe she would get her chance today. Tiamat was becoming even more embarrassed seeing her act like this, but soon enough she realized that Issei was still a virgin. Many wanted to come after her because of her beauty, but Issei was still a virgin. She felt depressed knowing she failed her only possible mate. The other girls were still jealous of Tiamat acting like this, but a part of them were happy that Issei was a virgin. Anyways, welcome back, John, and who is this fallen with you, master? Issei looked at her and spoke with a smile, she is Raynor and another of my bounties, please take care of her and let her know of the work that is done in this house. Tiamat understood this as the trio headed inside. Soon enough another person greeted the owner inside, who was a lavender-haired woman with orange eyes. She also wore a French-maid costume. She wore a maid headband, with the maid costume was black maid costume with white lower apron. This was Ingvild Leviathan. Welcome back, master, Mr. John. Issei gave a tired sigh as he responded, Ingvild, you don't need to call me master every time, just call me Issei. Ingvild nodded, however Issei knew she was going to call him that regardless of this. It was now Ingvild's turn to become a blushing mess. She couldn't believe what she was witnessing. Lucius was smiling seeing this, knowing about this as he met this Issei earlier. The others were agape at this, they couldn't imagine seeing this happen. Ingvild kept her hands on her face as she tried to cover her embarrassment. She couldn't believe what she was seeing this. Mary looked at her and asked, why is Ingvild his maid? Revan took a deep breath, paused the viewing and spoke. During the time of one of his other bounty hunting missions, he was asked to deal with the old Satan faction that were plaguing the devils. He traced them down to the Leviathan mansion and dealt with most of them that were outside. He soon went inside to see Ingvild passed out as a devil was trying to kill her. Issei killed the devil and took Ingvild under his wing. He saw that her father was dead. The one who asked for him was Azazel, due to him wanting to know about her. So that was how Issei and Ingvild met in this universe. Revan's words made Ingvild lose her blushing self and tear up, remembering her father died even in this world. Lucius and Mary calmed her down, knowing what had happened, as they all knew how much her father meant for her. She was the only one left for her, aside from Issei, Mary and her new team, that is. She barely had any family left. Many felt bad for Ingvild knowing what she went through. Some hoped Issei would be there for her when she needs her the most, which he was fortunately. Ingvild watched the scene, wondering how she is taking the death of her parents. She did not know how her counterpart is going to cope up with what happened to her parents. Anyways, Rainer, settle down. You said you wanted power, right? Rainer nodded as she spoke while looking away. Yeah, Tiamat and Ingvild looked at each other as Issei spoke. Well, in that case, there is a way I could help you with, but this means you have to give your entire devotion to me only. No one, neither man or woman, must come before me. Everyone will come after you. Sounds good. But aren't I already your servant and I have nowhere left to go? Rainer asked, confused, to which Issei responded, that was not what I meant. Even in this state you can still stab me in the back. Let's just say I have known some fallen angels that have done that to some of my clients. Rainer did not deny anything Issei had to say. She herself did backstab Mitsuda just a few days ago. Rainer in the audience did not deny this. The fallen angels that were under Kakabiel were known to do this to achieve their goals. She did not realize what she did wrong back then either. She looked at the audience, who were all watching the scene, knowing full well what Rainer had done to Issei, or at least most of them did. Those that did not were disgusted by the fallen angels back then, while the fallen angel cadres were angered by what Kakabiel had done. He was the reason why Grigori was in such a situation back in the day. And why the fallen angels had suffered even more casualties. Mary gritted her teeth in anger, remembering a certain fallen angel that was responsible for not only nearly killing her, but also introducing her to this world of the supernatural. Claire gave a glance towards her and looked at her sadly, remembering how she was introduced to the supernatural, partially blaming herself for not dealing with the fallen angel, since she was too late in discerning his intentions. I see, then I accept. Issei gave a grin which made her flinch as he spoke. You made the wise choice. Rainer nodded as she generated a magic circle underneath her and spoke. I wasn't planning to betray you anyway. Now pour some of your blood on the circle. Issei nodded and followed suit. The magic circle was easily recognized by Tiamat as a pact circle, which was something that she could easily remember given her pact with Issei. Ingvild also could recognize this, remembering that she agreed to form a pact with Issei without hesitation. The audience noted this and knew what would happen. This was something that was common in devil nature, forming a pact. But this was different. It was a blood pact, meaning the one forming the pact with Issei can't betray him, or else it would be death. Tiamat and Ingvild knew that they wouldn't betray Issei. Tiamat for her pride of being a dragon, and Ingvild for falling for Issei. While Rainer was partially worried, she hopes that her counterpart does not die. She has gotten a second life, and she does not want to screw it in any way. Issei cut off his finger with a knife, which he removed from his pocket, and dropped some blood as Rainer feels a surge of power, and a mark falls on her stomach as she collapsed to the ground. As she holds her stomach in pain due to her body adjusting herself, she couldn't handle it as she kept trashing and moaning in painful pleasure. Ah. Such power. Rainer kept moaning for a minute while John looked at her in shock. This was the first time he was seeing the master-slave pact. Well, he looked at Tiamat and she nodded. Although my condition was not like hers, I still felt pleasure due to power. I can control myself better than her. Tiamat explained to John, who nodded in understanding. Issei looked at Rainer as her breathing returned to normal. Issei asked with slight concern, you okay? Rainer nodded with a blush on her face. The power, it felt so dense and raw, it was so powerful I actually climaxed from it, Rainer shamelessly admitted, causing Issei to chuckle. While John understood that the weaker the servant is, they will have much less time to adjust. Some of the audience chuckled at Rainer at this, as Azazel commented, sure Rainer, just show that you like him. Rainer was looking down from her counterpart's actions. She looked with a red blush on her face, as she was embarrassed with what her counterpart's actions. Although, jokes aside, the fact that her body had to adjust to this Issei's body actually shows that he is stronger than he shows, and the fact that he was able to take down Serziches and Grafia shows how strong he really is. Ejuka spoke with concern as some of the audience were also concerned as he looked at him. The rest of the audience were also concerned with this. They wondered the upper limit of Issei. Rainer soon got up as she asked, that still does not explain how my power multiplied several times. Issei took a deep breath and gave his arm a huge cut as blood soon fell to the ground. The rest of the people in the audience were concerned as he spoke. "Issei, I told you I was experimented, right?" Rainer nodded as he spoke. "You see, when my parents were killed by a secret organization, I was taken by them and experimented with several stuff. I was too young to comprehend what it was, but the end result was that my body was physically altered to the point where I am beyond superhuman. Additionally, I also have immortality. Meaning I can't die even if my heart or my brain is destroyed, and so far, I can even survive with 90% of my body being disintegrated. I know this because I have dealt with someone capable of doing this level of damage. My immortality allows my body to regenerate faster than most humans or even gods. And if the regeneration surpasses the destruction of my body, I can still remain alive." Rainer gulped at this prospect. She could see how strong Issei really was, as he continued. "Additionally, I was given a unique power, a blessing if you may. The blessing allowed me to become the way I am, at the cost of not being able to use any sacred gear or having any magic talent. It gave me enhanced 5 senses, insane physical abilities and some other things, coupled with what I have. It also allows me to use legendary weapons without any consequence. However, what I have is more like removing limitations of being a human being, so I need to work as hard to get this strong," Issei explained before laying his head on the couch. The audience were surprised by this, however soon many were devastated as to what happened to Issei's parents, which caused both Goro and Miki to become pale at this revelation, while Laika and Ryu were crying in sadness. Some of the audience were livid at what happened to the Hyoudou couple, others were angry while some just did not care. Mary also shed some few tears when she heard of this and what Issei went through, although she decided to not show it to anyone. The strength meaning. Rainer tried to pry for more information as Issei spoke with a serious glare. "I will continue, but you must not reveal anything what happened to anyone, is that clear?" Issei's order activated as a burst of energy coursed to Rainer's body, making her obedient, to which she nodded in agreement. She knew messed with Issei was not someone to mess with. Rainer gulped seeing her counterpart like this. She was nothing short of a slave to Issei, someone she did not like. Very well, the strength to make the leaders' pantheons shit their pants. The strength to kill a god and bring the Devil King and his wife right to death's doors, Issei spoke with a shrug as Rainer widened her eyes. She heard stories of a being doing this. The leaders couldn't help but feel afraid by this, as Serziches held his wife closer to him with concern, knowing that this Issei nearly killed the two of them. Grafia was blushing, but like her husband she was afraid of this Issei. "That means, you are the..." Issei cuts her off and answers, "The supernatural bounty hunter." Issei finished as Rainer looked absolutely terrified. She was the servant of this monster. He was a well-known menace to society that is the supernatural bounty hunter. Hell, when you're the first ever human across the world to receive a special rank wanted level, which is reserved for like godlike beings, you know you're a problem. The audience gulped at this prospect of Issei. They had to respect and fear this variant of Issei. Sure, he was not ruthless and vindictive like concept Issei, but he has a very special motive of doing his job, and with his success rate of 100%, they are done for if they face this Issei. "That means I am the servant of the most dangerous human alive," Rainer muttered to herself as Issei just laughed. "Yeah, you're all kinds of fucked, but hey, Azazel is willing to train you. So that's a thing." Rainer sighed in relief at this prospect of revelation, as Issei spoke. "Well, I'd say we should all head to sleep. I have to head to school tomorrow. Apparently Zaz wants me to be a teacher." Issei looks towards John and speaks. "You too, John, you will be going there as a student." "As you wish, Sensei." John spoke with a bow as he headed to his room with Rainer asking, "How strong is Blondie?" "Strong enough to take on your old self with ease. He was able to keep up with that hybrid Akeno. He can handle himself just fine. I haven't estimated his upper gauge of strength though, but his powers and potential is really strong. He can hold his own even against high-class devils, although with some assistance from me of course." Rainer nodded in understanding as she spoke. "So where will I be staying?" "Tiamat should lead you to a room." Tiamat nodded as she understood what she had to do. She then spoke with a smile. "Follow me, Rainer." Rainer nodded in understanding as she did so. Rainer could only hope that her counterpart survives this one. She was not so lucky to have survived, and now only her counterpart will live for another day. "Alright, everyone, the next viewing will be taking place the next day," the audience noted in understanding as they continued to watch. "Issei, wake the fuck up, you are already late." A voice shouted from a distance as Issei rubbed his eyes. He looked up to see Azazel looking at him with an annoyed expression. "Hey Zaz. Don't hey Zaz me, you are already late. Don't you remember you have to go to school to be a teacher?" Azazel's tone was annoyed as Issei sighed and tried to reach for his hands. However, he could see that his hands were unable to be moved freely. He looked around to see Tiamat taking one hand as his pillow, while Ingvild doing the same with his other free hand. Issei responded with a groan. "You've got to be kidding me." Tiamat and Ingvild were having red tint on their cheeks seeing this. Well, Crom spoke with a teasing tone, "Oh, it seems like you are trying to seduce your mate." Tiamat gritted her teeth in embarrassment. She was going to get back at Crom one day for his teasing attitude. She wanted to punch him right now, as she was becoming even more embarrassed seeing herself like this. She never thought her mate would be a human in this world. Ingvild, on the other hand, was also beet red, as Mary teased her, "Well, it seems like a master is having the utmost service from his mate." Mary laughed at her face, as she became even more embarrassed. The others near her were chuckling, seeing her act like this. Well, the girls that truly loved Issei were jealous of Ingvild and Tiamat being in this position. Asia and the girls that were in Issei's old harem felt sad seeing this scene, believing that they once were in that position instead of them. They did not like what they were seeing, but there was nothing they could do. Some of the boys and men in the group were a bit jealous seeing Issei like this. He was so lucky to have charmed the two girls. Are you serious? You have two of the most beautiful women sleeping next to you, and you don't jump in. Are you even still a virgin? Issei responded with a deadpan tone, "Yes." Well, whatever, I am not someone to pry on matters like these. I would have jumped up the opportunity being with the strongest dragon king and the princess of Leviathan, but whatever, the good thing is that, since you are the physical education teacher, you can get dressed in any clothing. Azazel spoke with a shrug, as he carefully got up without disturbing the girls. He did not want to ruin their sleep. Many smiled in happiness for Issei showing care for the two girls. Ingvild was the happiest seeing this side of Issei. Are you sure you going to leave them uninformed? Issei responded with a neutral tone, "They can call me if they are worried. Besides, I have already told them that I will be heading to the academy, so it is not a problem." Yeah, just make sure that you are able to deal with Sona without a problem. She is one of the devil heiress, and please try not to cause a scene there. I don't want to deal with the aftermath of that. Issei spoke while waving his hands. Yeah, I won't. Sona and Seraphil sighed in relief that Issei will not harm them in any way. They mentally thanked Azazel for saving him. Azazel looked at him with an annoyed look as Issei spoke, "So is John ready?" Azazel looked at him and spoke, "He is actually more punctual than you. He is patiently waiting for you." Issei nodded as he headed to the bathrooms. Azazel then spoke, "And I will be picking up Rainer in a half an hour when you are gone." Azazel informed before teleporting out of there, as Issei just let out a sigh. "They better pay me 11 digits for this shit, fucking dealing with kids with some of them being snot-nosed devils," Issei muttered to himself before getting properly dressed in the shower. He decided to head to school as soon as possible. He closed the door before entering the room. Some of the girls pouted in the audience as they couldn't see Issei's body. These were girls that actually loved Issei. "It seems like he is going to suck your bank account dry." Mary commented to Azazel, who could only give a sigh in response. Mary was right in that condition. The scene changes to Issei and John in Kuo Academy. The latter wore Kuo male uniform, which was tailored to perfectly fit him, while Issei wore a black nylon shirt and grey track pants, along with sports shoes. Claire, along with the girls that liked him, had a blush on their faces, seeing his chiseled body being displayed thanks to the nylon shirt, as Mary looked at her and spoke with a sigh. "Oh dear, Yakitori loves my brother," Mary muttered to herself, which Claire fortunately did not hear due to what she was seeing. Some of the boys vowed to train harder to reach this Issei's body type. Issei noticed that no one was there, meaning he was late by half an hour. As he looked at John, the duo made a quick dash towards the school. No sooner than he entered, their gazes were felt upon by the devils watching him. "They are watching us." John's senses were much more heightened ever since he came here and was trained under Issei, as he muttered to him, "I know." The duo headed to the student council door. As Issei knocked on the door, soon enough a female voice responded, "Enter." Issei did so, as Sona, the only person in her room, looked with surprise as a behemoth of a person entered her room that was Issei. Meanwhile, Issei seemed unamused, knowing that devils like to lurk in dark places. Many were curious on how their first interaction would go. "I am the PE teacher and the kid's the student. We both are here for our schedules." Sona snapped out of her shock, as she nodded and gulped in fear before taking out a document from her drawer, giving the first one to John. "This is your schedule. Your books will arrive later today at your house. You will be attending class 2A. So I think you should head there." John nodded as he bowed and spoke, "Thank you, President." Sona responded with a smile. As John headed outside the room, Sona soon took another document from another drawer. As she spoke, "Your schedule is here. The good thing was that you did not have any classes. However, I would advise you to make it on time since some classes are quite early." Issei nodded as he started to look at her. Not half as bad for a devil. Short in the bust and ass department, but she does have this strong department that I like. Sona, in the audience, looked at her body and felt rather underwhelmed. She did not have the buster ass like Ria's does, and Issei knew it. "It's okay, Sotan, your one Isama still loves you regardless." Seraphil spoke with an assuring tone as Sona felt even more saddened by this. However, she did notice that Issei still saw her for strong attitude and had a red tint, which only lasted for a moment. Issei took the schedule and left the room as he noticed from the corner of his eye, Riaz and Akeno were walking in his direction. You've got to be fucking kidding me. Issei made a left dash towards a different direction, narrowly avoiding Riaz and Akeno. The Gremory family and peerage sighed in relief, thankful that a confrontation will not be happening anytime soon. However, they feared that it will happen sooner or later. Issei soon walks towards the class he was assigned to due to having a PE lecture there. Since he knew that this was John's class, he hoped it would be easier, only for someone to be sent flying towards the wall, knocking him out cold. Issei looked at the one who was sent flying and was surprised to see Mitsuda being the one that was sent flying. As he turned around to see John speak, "Stop annoying me, I won't listen to that red-haired cow." Issei smiled in response hearing John speak like this. Riaz was offended with what John had called her. Worse, it was Issei that smiled for John doing this. The other guests remained speechless upon hearing John call her that. Some were chuckling hearing that John said that, knowing that she was a red-haired cow, causing Riaz to glare at them with anger and hatred. One of them was Mary and Claire, who did see her as a red-haired cow. Regardless, many were amazed by John's level of strength. He knocked out Mitsuda with a single punch. They wondered what Issei has been training this boy with. John was standing in front as two girls praised him. "That is our true prince." John rolled his eyes upon hearing this with the other speaking, putting that pervert in his place is something that only a true prince would do. If anything, he was annoying. I could care less on what he or that red-haired cow wants. Some of the boys in the school wanted to teach a lesson to John, but were scared of his strength. While Asia rushed to heel towards him. "Alright, John, that's enough." John was startled with the voice, however he calmed down when he saw it was his mentor and teacher that showed up. When they saw Issei, many were intimidated by his presence. Some of the girls were blushing seeing his physique, while Asia was worried seeing him here. Mitsuda soon got up and was angered seeing him here, but with everyone present, he had to remain quiet. "Now I want you maggots to get on the ground, in 10 minutes, get dressed and head down, no exceptions. Failure to comply will result in detention. Do I make myself clear?" Issei commanded seriously as the students nodded with respect and fear. The audience was startled by what Issei had done and how he was able to get the command of everyone in just one word. They wondered just how powerful Issei can get. Riaz was still getting angry at what John was saying, however Mary noticed her and spoke, not caring for others. "Serves you right, you red-haired cow." Riaz wanted to tear her apart, but knowing what she is and what she is capable of, she did not try anything. Surziches looked at her and sighed, knowing that his sister is going to take a while to change. Asia and Mitsuda were heading to the orc, as Asia earlier was told by Mitsuda that he was the man that had stopped the peerage from eliminating Rainer. However, Issei sensed this and walked towards them and whispered with a sinister smile. Now, don't you dare walk in an opposite direction. I know you want to report to your master, but there is no way I am letting you disrupt my classes. Am I clear?" The duo were shivering as they nodded with fear. Issei knew what exactly they were intending to do, as Mitsuda spoke. "Why yes, sensei, we will go after that." Issei smiled in response. Good. Issei soon walked away as he spoke while waving behind. "Now, you only have 10 minutes. I would advise you to make it as soon as possible. Got it?" "Yes." The duo nodded as Issei walked away. Mitsuda was glaring at Issei with anger. Issei headed to the ground waiting for the students. As he did, he noticed someone walking towards him. The audience were shocked by how Issei was able to control the situation again. Asia was shivering seeing how Issei was able to deal with them with fear. Riaz and the orc girls held Asia with worry for her well-being. They dreaded on what this Issei could possibly do to Asia if she were to ever get in the way of his mission. Some of the others wondered who walked towards him, as that was going to be revealed soon. "I never thought you would be showing yourself as a teacher, especially after the stunt you pulled at the church." The one who spoke was Sona Citri herself, and she was alone, to which Issei spoke with a shrug. "So you figured it out, huh? Well, good job. What do you want from me? Why are you even here? And what are your intentions, Hyoudou?" Issei shook his head and responded, "Business babe, I'm getting paid to be here." "Can't say more sorry," Issei answered to Sona, as she looked at him before nodding and walked over to him. She soon asked, "I see. Then I politely ask if your business resolves with us devils." "Nope, I'm here for something else. But don't involve yourself with my business, okay? I ain't here for trouble with you peeps. So don't bother me with stupid shit and leave politics out of it." Issei spoke after shaking his head, making Sona nod as she closed her eyes and wondered about something. "Very well. I respect your wishes, but please keep yourself out of our affairs as well. I'm responsible for the safety of the people in this town. I won't do anything, so long you don't cause any trouble for us. But I'd like to start a friendly relationship with you, to prevent hostility between us. Is that possible with you?" Sona asked, making Issei surprised. In how time he had met mostly devils that were either prideful or arrogant, many falling to the latter. Most of the devils in the audience were offended by this statement. They did not like how Issei looked down upon them. Some of them understood why this was going to happen given his natural fight against Surziches and Graphia. He must have encountered the arrogant or prideful side of the devils, however they wondered who else did Issei had to face or kill in order to deal with them. Sona herself pondered on what this Issei had encountered before meeting her, while Serafal could only hope that her sister does not try any funny business with Issei. Fine, so long you don't push your devil shit onto me. We can be cool. Issei answered as he extended his hand. Sona looked surprised for a moment before accepting the handshake. Call me Issei and not going to lie. To be honest, you aren't half bad for a devil. And believe me, I met a shit ton of them. Issei remarked, which made Sona smile in response, as she nodded. Sona had also a smile hearing this from Issei, while Serafal was proud of her sister as she rushed towards her while exclaiming, so tan. Sona felt dread knowing what is going to happen next as RageRevan came in the middle and spoke, now, you can have your sisterly bond later on, once the viewing is done, okay? Serafal gave a pout as she turned away with the same pout. Sona mentally thanked RageRevan for helping her as he played the viewing, which was paused. That wasn't something I was expecting to hear. But thanks, however you should avoid Ria's grimoire and her peerage, she very much hates you for what happened in the church yesterday, Sona warned Issei, making him chuckle. Shit, I'd be mad too if my ass were to be ragdolled towards the ground like a rag. Issei replied with a shrug, making Sona giggle out of amusement. Some of the audience were chuckling at how Issei mocked Rias, while Rias was looking down in embarrassment. Her peerage, or more accurately Hyoudou, Akeno and Kaneko, were also embarrassed, with Akeno being the most due to what Issei had done. Sona had a small red tint seeing the side of her with Issei, he was one of the few that made her laugh in joy. Jinshiro was glaring at the screen with jealousy, while two girls were looking at Jinshiro with sadness, he still has not noticed their crush for him. Tsubaki looked at the scene and gave a sigh, knowing that things will get intense from here on out. See you around, and I would say to head to your physical education class, you are already going to be late. Issei nodded in understanding, as Sona warned him, leaving the area. He did not expect to become decent acquaintances with a devil on the very first day of his job. But he didn't mind since that would mean he would be dealing with less drama. The scene shifts to Issei lying on the ground, resting since there was no classes for a few minutes. The PE class was surprisingly coordinative and he knew that there would be no problems later. The audience were relieved that no one was coming to bother this Issei for a while as they continued to watch the scene. However, Issei sensed someone coming towards him and cursed underneath his breath, fuck so much for peace lasting. The one who stormed to him was Rias as she demanded, what the hell are you doing here? Issei ignored her and kept his eyes closed. Rias was embarrassed by her counterpart's actions, she looked to see many giving either a disappointed or an annoyed look towards her or the screen, with Surziches sighing in disappointment. I really spoiled her too much, Surziches muttered with disappointment as Venelana responded, you think? This was unfortunately not audible to Rias, who was being calmed down by Akeno and the others of her peerage. Answer me, what are you doing here? Rias angrily demanded as Issei only responded by shifting and letting out a yawn. Some of the audience were chuckling at Ria's misery, while Rias was herself being more embarrassed by her actions. Ria's anger rose as before she could do anything stupid, she was dragged away by Sona, who pulled her away from him at a safe distance. Rias. Stop this at once. Sona ordered as she rose her own blue aura that seemed to match Ria's, who turned around and glared at Sona. But she was surprised that Sona glared back while raising her own aura. I said stop. Your pride is getting in your head. He defeated you and your peerage with ease before. So what is stopping him from doing it again? Sona tried to make Ria see reason, who clenched her teeth in anger. Those that cared for Ria sighed in relief, who knew that she was stopped from doing something stupid. Don't expect me to save her ass from Issei ever again, Sona spoke coldly, looking towards Rias, who looked at her with a look of disbelief. As she was going to respond, Sona cuts her off. Don't you dare play the childhood friend card, Rias. You betrayed Issei and I am not cleaning up your mess. Your problem with Issei is yours to solve. I am not helping you if you try to provoke or control him in any manner. Sona continued with a very cold tone as she turned away. Many were surprised by Sona's attitude, but they couldn't blame her knowing that she was responsible for this. Serafal smiled seeing this side of hers, even she would not support Rias for what she had done, while Rias was clenching her fists in anger while crying tears of sadness. But why did you accept him here? Rias asked as she lowered her aura. Sona did the same, but kept a strong presence to keep reminding Rias to not repeat her mistake. I wasn't aware, he was the new teacher until a few moments ago. Also, I did agree to not cause trouble for him in any way. I would advise you to keep your peerage under check and keep distance from him, Sona advised Rias while adjusting her glasses, as Rias asked hot-headed, who is he to demand us on what we need to do? Someone that can beat your ass in less than a second. But I'm getting tired of your annoying voice, Red. You're lucky that I'm here for another reason. But the moment you push your luck. Not even your brother will be there to save your sorry ass. Now leave before I crush you like an insect. Issei spoke coldly and threatened with a medium voice. Despite not having any magical presence, he was enough to make Rias and Sona nearly shit their panties from the overwhelming presence. It reminded them of the presence of their king, almost similar to their older siblings. Many of the weaker-willed audience were shivering at Issei's side of things, while Milikas and Kunu were crying, as their mothers were calming them down. The stronger side of the audience were able to handle this side, but even they were on guard. Surziches and Ajuka noted he could potentially keep up with even Drag and Albion if he wanted to. He was almost unstoppable. Both girls gulped and rapidly nodded their heads with fear, with Rias running away from the scene with fear. She almost tripped but was able to recover. She immediately retreated to the orc building. Issei let out a sigh before scratching his head and speaking, "Sorry about that. I just got tired of her bitching around like she owns the world. Please do me a small favor and keep her away from me." Issei spoke politely as Sona nodded while fixing her composure and gave a short bow in return. Understood. However, who you threatened was the younger sister of Satan Lucifer, which can put you on his bad side. Sona spoke with a bit concern, as nobody in their right mind would provoke or even threaten him in any way. I would be angry at whoever threatened Rias, but with Issei, if you try to annoy him anyway, don't expect me to stop him in any way. Rias Surziches spoke seriously to his little sister who nodded in understanding. She knew that this was going to come with what happened to Rias. This was something she brought on herself. Grafia herself was glaring at her in disappointment as she did not know what to do with her at this point. Meanwhile, Sona was having a red tint on her face seeing her concern for Issei. Well, Serafel noticed this and thought, "Don't tell me you have fallen for him." Issei only scoffed in response as he looked up at the sky. "Let her try anything, I've already had a run-in with him and it is nothing I can't handle." Issei reassured before he headed back to another class to take his physical education class, but before he left, he spoke, "I'm gonna be honest, I don't like a lot of devils, but you don't mind having someone like you around me, so how about we stay in touch?" Sona was surprised. She had to think about it. She did not really know what to make of this. But her devil instincts were telling her that this human was much more than she lets on. So deciding to follow her instincts for once, she nodded at him. "Sure. Now I am curious, I want to know how a fight between me and this Issei happened." Surziches looked at Grafia, who was equally curious than him, as RageRevan spoke. "Let's just say, it was not pretty, that is all I can tell." Surziches and Grafia were wondering what this meant. They knew what Issei was capable of, but they wanted to know just how strong he can get. The scene shifts to the bell ringing late in the evening as it was the end of school. Issei was about to head up to pick John up to head back home as he saw Sona waiting for him. "Hello Issei, do you mind walking with me?" Sona spoke with a smile as she continued, "I wish to inform you about something." "Sure, what's going on?" Issei spoke with a shrug. He was not so kind to devils. But Issei had a good eye on people's true nature. He could tell she was not trying anything funny, so he could see what is going on. "Why does President want to talk to Issei?" Jinshiro asked with surprise as RageRevan spoke. "That will be revealed soon enough. You see, Ria's Gremory recently had a problem. Hence she is trying to obtain strong peerage members to solve that problem. She is engaged to Riser Phoenix, a high-class devil, and apparently he is going to show up tomorrow. He is going to show up in the club room." Issei raised an eyebrow. "Why tell me this?" Issei asked, confused, to which Sona responded, "Because I know how desperate Rias can get. She does not want to marry him and knows the only way to escape her marriage is to defeat Riser in a raiding game. It is possible despite what happened yesterday. She might ask or worse force you to aid her." Sona informed, making Issei nod slowly. "Sona, did you actually want to do anything to stop Riser back then?" Riser asked toward Sona as she nodded. "Yes Riser, I would have done anything to help my friend, but now, don't expect me to help her from this situation." Riser nodded in understanding as he spoke. "Riser understands." And RageRevan turned around to Riser, who asked, "Can you tell Riser how desperate she was to get out of her marriage?" RageRevan looked at Rias, who was pleading not to tell him. He smirked as he spoke while pausing the viewing. "Well Riser, she teleported to Issei's room and asked Issei to take his virginity so that she gets out of it." Rias was pale as a ghost when she heard this as Riser nodded and shook his head. He then spoke. "Riser can't say much. Riser should thank Issei for saving him from this marriage." "You probably should, Riser, when you meet him soon." Claire spoke as Riser nodded in understanding. Many of the audience were shocked by how desperate Rias can get, while Mary muttered underneath her breath, "Fucking slut, if Mary were around, she would have never let this happen. Her family is fractured and divided indirectly because of her. She should have been there much earlier." RageRevan replayed the viewing as he knew what will happen next. "And what does she think? Why would I help her?" Issei asked, making Sona shrug her own shoulders despite her pride. "Rias can get very desperate. She even asked me to lend her some of my own servants." Which I refused since I did not want them to get injured, which would most likely happen, Sona informed answered. Issei closed his eyes as he thinks about something. There is another reason why you are telling me this, right? Issei asked knowing as Sona lets out a sigh. Yes, I was hoping that I might convince you to help her. You don't have to join her to help her as she has an incomplete set which gives her the power to call it temporary fill. Knowing how easily you dealt with her, I was wondering that you might help her just this once. Sona said, making Issei silent as he let out a sigh. The audience knew what would happen. Some were hoping that Issei outright denies her, but knowing his personality, he only cares about money, and since the Grimmery family is rich, it is not an issue. Sorry Sona, but I don't work for free. If you or she wants me to fight for her, I better see a lot of cash and gold on the table. I don't have a big heart of kindness to do things for her. Issei spoke with a shrug as Sona mused. Sure, she was rich, but she herself couldn't really ask her own parents to pay someone for Ria's sake. Sona's parents were very strict when it came to raising her, as a result she was more humble into learning that being a high-class devil isn't all that. Something that the Grimmery family did not do, causing Ria's to become very spoiled. Sona and Seraphil agreed with Sona's counterpart with them, knowing how strict their parents were in raising them. Balziocitus and Serziches sighed knowing this was not true, with Venelana and Graphia both looking at Rias with disappointment, knowing why she is like that. Rias herself was looking down in sadness in what she did. I will tell Rias about it. Of course, if she is willing to pay the amount you desire. Will you fight for her behalf? Sona asked as Issei immediately nodded. Of course, I'm not the one to hold grudges, and to be honest, I only care about money than some stupid argument. Issei's words made Sona chuckle as he neared John's class. Then I'll inform Rias about your offer. I'm certain she would give you the amount you want. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Have a good day, Issei. Sona said her goodbyes as she left Issei, who watched her leave. Well, shit, I'm about to get my ass in trouble again. Well, it matters not, as long as the money is good. I could care less, Issei muttered to himself as he headed to pick up John and head home. Riser felt dread on what is going to happen. This Issei clearly doesn't mind being paid, as he looked to Rias, who was still looking away from everyone's gazes. The Grimmeries were considering to limit Ria's pocket money. They were giving her millions per month, and to their family, billions is like pocket change to her. They could only hope that this would bring about a change in her attitude. Well, then, it is time for the gifts. Revan snapped his fingers as suddenly Ingvald and Tiamat got a ping in their inventories. As they looked at it, Revan then spoke. Your maid costumes your counterparts wore. The two immediately blushed upon hearing this, with many chuckling hearing this, as Raynor suddenly felt a surge of power, with her feeling different, with her speaking, I feel different. That is because your powers are attuned to what happened to your counterpart. She is as strong as her counterpart. Many were shocked by this revelation as they understood that gifts can also mean powers as well. As long as their counterparts have them, there is a chance that they gain the power. But why give them the power? Especially her, Azazel asked with surprise as Revan responded, I never said gifts can't mean powers, and don't worry, your guys will also get powers if you succeed. The audience nevertheless nodded while Raynor pondered on what she can do with these powers. Some, like Rias and her peerage, were concerned with Raynor's growing power, with the fallen angel smirking seeing them like this. Mary narrowed her eyes. If she becomes a problem, she will deal with her accordingly. Now then, you can take a 5 minutes of break before we begin with the next viewing. The audience nodded as Revan decided to do some work in order to deal with some stuff. Alright, before we begin the next viewing, there is someone I would like to bring. Now allow me to introduce the man himself of the story. Revan pointed to the door, which suddenly had a smoke trail which shocked everyone, as they wondered who it was, as suddenly a man came from the smoke whom everyone recognized. It was Issei Hyoudou of the universe that they all were watching right now, that being Bounty Hunter Issei. Meet Bounty Hunter, Supernatural Killer, Issei. The Issei you all were watching. The audience were silent, instead of cheering, as some of them like Rias had fear in their eyes seeing him here. Issei looked at them and grinned. What up, noobs? Issei walked further ahead as he spoke to Revan. Geez, is it necessary for a dramatic entrance? Yep, you are one of the Isseis. I will only do this for alternates of Isseis and another person, so you need not worry. Now I think you should take a seat. Hunter. Issei nodded as he took a seat a little farther from Azazel and his group. He preferred keeping his distance. He knew the people in this theater weren't his parents or any of his family members. Tiamat and Ingvald took a good look at this Issei. Their counterparts were in a relationship with the Issei in the room, as they immediately became embarrassed knowing how much their counterparts loved him. Additionally, Tiamat also knew that this Issei was not the Red Dragon Emperor, but still she couldn't imagine herself being in that state. Raynor also took one look at this Issei. He had every reason to kill her, but took her in for how she looked. She felt relieved that her counterpart had gotten a chance to live rather than her as well. While those from the Norse wondered who hired this Issei to kill Balder and hope that the viewing will reveal the truth, they will make him pay for this. Alright, let us begin. RageRevan spoke as he started to play the scene as Hunter. Issei was interested in seeing this. The scene opens up in the occult research club room, with Riaz and her company waiting for someone, as they look at Issei and John, who were minding their own business as John was reading a book on sword fighting and katana training, while Issei was playing some games on his mobile, waiting for their guest to arrive. Many were surprised by this revelation, as they wondered what had just happened, as RageRevan soon explained. If you are wondering, Riaz has already asked Issei for his services to beat Rizer. I am sorry for what is to happen to you. RageRevan explained to Rizer, who was shuddering in fear knowing what this Issei is capable of, as his peerage calmed him down. Even Ravel and Claire were fearful of this development, as they hoped their brother will be alright, as Claire glared at Riaz. If her brother dies because of this Issei, she will make her pay. This made Riaz shudder in fear. So any news of his appearance? Issei asked Riaz, as Grafia soon teleported in, alongside Rizer, as Rizer spoke. It's been so long since Rizer has come to this world. Rizer soon turns towards Riaz and her peerage as he spoke. Hello, my darling Riaz, your fiancé has come to this world. Riaz scowled at this man in hatred, along with the rest of her peerage glaring at him. Issei and John took one look at him, and also found him annoying, as Issei thought. So he is one of those, huh? Issei rolled his eyes, as he looked at Ria's expression. He was amused seeing her like this. And if you are wondering, yes, I used to find you annoying, and yes, I hate many of the devils present in this room, especially due to your arrogance, Hunter. Issei spoke coldly, as the devils present were fearful or weary, as they hoped that he was not on their list. Rizer was the most fearful of this Issei. Hunter. Issei looked towards Grafia and Surziches and gave them a grin, which brought shivers to their expression. They had to not provoke this Issei at all costs. Time had passed as Issei and John watched unamused at what was happening. Nobody noticed them due to their presence being almost nothing, well, John was too barely to notice as well. However, they neither cared, even Grafia failed to notice his presence. However, they became amused when Riaz and Rizer got angry at what happened next. Riaz and Rizer, along with their peerages, remembered what had happened, and so did Grafia as well. Knowing what had happened, many remembered how Issei was before, and how he is currently, and that made Rizer and his peerage along with Grafia saddened, while Riaz and her peerage was fearful. We really need to stop arranged marriages, Surziches muttered, as knew how many pure-blooded devils still believed in pure-blooded supremacy and hated the thought process, but he did not know how to change it. He wondered how many more devils were suffering from this, both male and female. I don't care if I have to incinerate your entire peerage. I will force you become my wife. Rizer yelled as his aura flared while he created a ball of fire in his hand. But before he could do anything, his hand with the fireball was grabbed by someone that dispelled the attack and forced Rizer to stumble forwards as his arm was being twisted. Enough shit, stick. Issei said calmly while twisting Rizer's arm, causing him to yell in pain. Everybody was surprised. Nobody sensed or expected Issei to suddenly appear. But the one who looked the most surprised was the strongest in the room, that being Grafia. She who looked as pale as a ghost as her eyes locked on with the young man that defeated not only her but her husband as well a few years ago. Grafia shuddered on what happened to her counterpart, as she knew that Issei had tormented her counterpart, but she did not know how. She looked at RageRevan and asked. What happened to my counterpart? That will be revealed in this viewing. You both would have been almost killed if it was not for Issei not being interested in drama. RageRevan pointed to Hunter. Issei as he spoke. Indeed, babe, you and your arrogant husband thought it was a good idea to confront me rather than my contractor. It did not end well for you, and trust me, it was not only going to be fearful, but also humiliating. Grafia glared at Hunter. Issei, who only gave a predatory grin in response, making her fearful, as Surziches brought his wife closer to protect her. Hunter. Issei turned away knowing full well that even the Surziches can't beat her even if they wanted to. Just what is he capable of? Falbium spoke with fear as Ajuka responded, I hoped we don't find out. Ajuka wondered if his Kankara formula would work on someone like him, since he was more of a physical attacker rather than a magic user. Let go, you bastard. Rizer demanded as Issei just gave him a look. Fine. Issei accepted as he let go of Rizer's arm as he tried to stand up. But the moment he did, Issei had already kicked him in the crotch, making him fall on his knees, holding his probably bleeding junk. Many of the males shuddered at what this Issei did to Rizer, along with Rizer, who was the most fearful while holding his own crotch. He was glad to not screw with Hunter. Issei, unlike his counterpart that he feared the most. So Hunter, can I ask you a question? Hunter turned around to see Mary asking him a question as he spoke. Is there any job that you have denied? Hunter. Issei looked at Mary as he spoke. Several jobs, but the reason usually varied. One of the most common reasons was the bad payment those jobs gave. I see. Mary noted as the viewing continued. Issei? Riaz asked with hope as Issei just glanced at her before nodding. Issei then turned towards Grafia, who still looked frozen as Issei slowly walked towards her. "Hey babe, how is your husband doing?" Issei asked with a sadistic grin as Grafia swallowed her spit and gave him a serious look. "Just what exactly happened to my counterpart?" Surziches muttered in shock, given Grafia being completely fearful due to what this Issei did. She prayed that she was not his enemy. "Why are you here?" she asked seriously. But everybody could see the visible sweat rolling down her forehead. Issei chuckled as John had spoken. "Counted princess here wanted to ask for sensei's services in order to deal with the arrogant phoenix, so she hired him to fill in for the rating game." John answered for Issei as the latter got angry, but with Issei around, she did not try anything with him. He glanced at her, who got the message. "Geez, he really hates her, doesn't he?" Azazel mused in shock as Hunter. Issei had spoken. The kid is reminded of a redhead from his past. He really hates her for reasons that will be revealed soon enough, and Ria's does look similar to her. Hunter. Issei's tone seemed to be a bit sad, as many wondered who was the girl that looked like Ria's. Ria's herself was wondering who is this girl. Well, she was angry at John for saying that. She wondered who this redhead girl was. Only Hunter. Issei and Revan knew about her and stayed quiet about it. "Why yes. Issei Hyoudou here has agreed to be a temporary fill-in since I have an incomplete peerage." Riaz agreed, which made Grafia look actually flabbergasted. "Lady Riaz, do you know who that young man is?" Grafia asked with fear in her voice. "Not really. He is a new teacher at our school yesterday, and the new transfer student John is his student." Riaz answered honestly as Grafia looked like she was about to pass out. "If you are wondering, the supernatural bounty hunter's true identity is kept a secret due to what he has done." Revan spoke with a serious tone, as the audience minus Hunter. Issei nodded in agreement as Auden spoke while rubbing his beard. "It makes sense. If people know that the hunter is responsible for the killings, they will go on a panic spree and chaos will happen." The other leaders nodded while Hunter. Issei knew about this and was also a bit content. He was not interested in dealing with any drama at all. Issei however spoke as he looked at Riser, who still was holding on to his crotch. "Don't sweat it too much. She was willing to pay for my services. So I'm here to help her out." "So when is the rating game?" Issei asked as he got close to Grafia, who shakily looked at him. "I've to speak with the clan heads about this endeavor," Grafia replied, making Issei lean forwards and got close to her ear. Now don't try and do something stupid. Or else someone else might become my next target," Issei threatened as Grafia felt Issei poke her stomach, which gave her the message what Issei was gesturing at. Her own son. The audience was horrified by this as Grafia held her son close to her as they both were fearful. Surziches glared at Hunter. Issei with anger and fear in his face. Venelana and Zeocitus also did the same as Grafia shouted. "You bastard. How can you do this to a child? Don't you have a heart, Hunter?" Issei only laughed in response. "Oh no, that was a bluff, a perfect bluff which worked pretty well for someone as arrogant as you." Revan nodded in agreement as he spoke. "Unless there is someone that doesn't hire Issei to kill Milikas, your son would be safe. He puts his job and gives it the most priority. That is why I am the most successful bounty hunter out in my world." Hunter. Issei spoke with a grin as the Grimoires were fearful of this as they hoped that no one would come after Milikas. But Hunter. Issei and Revan knew what concept Issei did to his Milikas. If a threat is what scared them to this extent, then what will happen when he actually is killed by that Issei's hands? Grafia's eyes widened with true fear showing as she took a step back. "My apologies, I've misspoken. I will inform the clan heads that Riaz Grimoire has accepted the challenge against Riser Phoenix. Lady Riaz is also allowed to use any temporary fill-in if they volunteer. I'll go back to the underworld. I'll bring Riser Phoenix with me. I'll inform Lady Riaz about the specifics about the rating game later today. Have a good day." Grafia said before walking over to the still kneeling and teleported them back to hell. Issei just chuckled as he started walking back towards the door. Riaz however stopped him. Issei. Thank you for helping me. I'm sorry for my actions earlier. If you wish to discuss anything, please don't hesitate." Riaz thanked, making Issei nod as he let out a sigh. "Just pay me with a shit ton of gold. Japanese yen won't get me far anyways." Issei replied before leaving as everybody looked at him with shock. John followed him soon after. "Yeah, looking at it, Japanese yen is one of the currencies that has a low value, right?" Arthur asked Azazel, who nodded in agreement as he spoke. "Indeed, and since the Grimoires are very rich, Issei can actually get a good deal out of it if Surziches is able to get him on his side. Since all this one needs is money." The Grimoires were a bit relieved as Hunter. Issei then spoke. "Shame he is an arrogant devil like many others to consider that option." Hunter's words made some of the devils annoyed as Surziches rubbed his forehead. He had a feeling that many of his counterparts are like that. John and Issei were heading back to their home as John asked. "Sensei, are you sure of letting Grafia go? She would tell everything to Surziches." Issei shook his head and spoke, "You needn't worry, if he is smart, he would know not to cross me." "But what if he does?" John asked with a serious tone, as Issei only gave a grin and responded. "If he tries that, I will make sure to finish what I started and leave his corpse on the Gremory mansion. His parents and son would love to see their father's head." As a present, Issei spoke with a dark grin, as John nodded, knowing this is what his sensei would have done to those that annoy him or head to his place. Surziches was horrified by this, as he could only imagine the grief that his loved ones in faction would feel. The devils were fearful of this. They knew that this Issei was not to be crossed with, no matter what happens. "Hunter." Issei grinned seeing this development. The scene changes to the underworld, where Grafia is teleported back to Surzich's castle, as she arrived at the room where her husband was working. "Surziches? This is an emergency." Grafia barged in the room as Surziches looked surprised, as his wife never acted like this before. "What happened, dear?" Surziches asked in response, as Grafia looked visibly terrified. "It's him, that monster is in Japan," Grafia mumbled, but Surziches heard what she said. "What monster?" Surziches asked, confused. But the next thing Grafia said made the usual relaxed Devil King actually look scared for his life. "The supernatural bounty hunter." "I don't blame them for their fear, after all I have left quite a dent in their hearts, Hunter." Issei spoke with a grin, making some of the devils glare at him. "What?" Surziches exclaimed with horror. As he spoke with horror, "Grafia, please tell me this is a lie. Please tell me you are joking." "And no, Surziches, I am not." Surziches fell back to his seat and spoke with horror. Fuck. Surziches remembered his encounter with this Issei, knowing what exactly he had done to him. He was lucky that he was still alive even after that. This took place 3 years ago. Now we will be seeing a flashback of the fight between the two. Revan spoke as the Gremories nodded in understanding, as they wondered how the fight really went between them. Flashback begins. In the underworld, Surziches Lucifer, formerly Gremory, was rubbing the side of his head as he just received a very concerning message. A clan head of the 72 Pillar Devils has just been assassinated. This was concerning news, as all the clan heads were heavily protected by very powerful barriers that could give a Satan-class individual a hard time breaking through. This caused a mayhem within the nobility, as with the limited information that they have, Surziches couldn't puzzle of who it possibly could be. While he was thinking to himself, Grafia walked over and gave her husband a cup of coffee. "My lord, do you wish for me to personally track this individual? We haven't found any spores of who it could be. But we did trace some demonic energy or residuals of Lord Daguerre's that pointed that the culprit is currently still in the underworld." Grafia offered, as well many didn't know this. But Grafia is an excellent hunter with a talent of tracking others. Sikvera was horrified by this revelation, as she looked towards Revan, who responded, "Yes, Hunter. Issei killed your father. He was paid 20 million to take out his life." "Hunter." Issei looked towards Sikvera, who was weeping at her father's demise. Olivian and Bafiel were glaring at Issei as he spoke with a shrug. "A certain faction wanted him dead, and I could care less if I killed him. He meant nothing to me, so why should I care?" The audience were horrified by Hunter Issei's actions, as he was a man that took his job very seriously, completing it to its fullest. Sikvera then angrily shouted with a tear-filled rage. "How could you be this unempathetic? He was my father. Don't you have any empathy?" "Hunter." Issei narrowed his gaze and spoke coldly. "I lost mine a long time ago, and it was thanks to the supernatural factions. I am just a simple man making his way in a world where the supernatural, or several of them, will torment humans just for their amusement, and I have to work my way out in some way. This is the only way, Hunter." Issei spoke coldly, with Sikvera weeping even more. Revan then spoke. "Olivian, Bafiel, calm your lady down before she does anything reckless." The two nodded in understanding, knowing how dangerous Issei was, and did not want to cross him. Many knew this Issei was experimented on, and some of them felt empathy. They wouldn't blame him if he hated them. But he did not. He was just a bounty hunter, nothing more, nothing less. Surziches gave a short nod. "Sure, dear. But be careful. For someone to sneak into the barriers placed around the territory and castle of Lord Daguerre's, it means we are facing with a dangerous opponents." Surziches accepted as Grafia nodded in return. "Very well. I'll departure this instant, my lord." Grafia said as she left the office, leaving Surziches alone deep in his thoughts. "I've a bad feeling about this," he thought to himself, as he hoped his wife and queen wouldn't end up in danger or possibly death. "Yeah, and this is where the nightmare begins, right?" Grafia spoke with fear. They were lucky that their counterpart survived the whole ordeal, but others do not. Surziches held her hand to assure her that she was fine. He hoped that his counterpart gets the brains to act accordingly. It didn't take the Queen of Annihilation a long time to track down the aura of the deceased Lord Daguerre's. After a while, Grafia arrived at an old building in the middle of a ruined territory. She wore a more battle-suited attire. "This is where the trail ends," Grafia said to herself as she slowly approached the old home. She peeked through the window as she saw a young man who looked to be in his late teens. Nearly 20 years old. If you are wondering, I was 20 years back then, right now I actually reaching 24 this year, Hunter. Issei explained as the audience nodded in understanding, as some wondered how the fight will go. Grafia narrowed her eyes as the young man slowly woke up and turned his head from the couch to her. Grafia was surprised as she perfectly hid her aura and presence. She quickly jumped to action, freezing the entire building in just a few seconds. That should keep him away. Before Grafia could continue, she was grabbed by her shirt and sent flying towards a nearby wall. She managed to recover only to see the young man as an attacker. So what do I owe the pleasure of meeting the strongest queen? Grafia stoned her features and demanded. Are you the one that attacked Lord Aguirre's? Issei only looked at her and spoke, yes so. And I. Normally this is how we deal with those that kill the high-ranking members of the Devil Society. But this ends badly, right? Ingvild spoke with worry in her voice as Hunter. Issei responded. Yep, and that is how it is, and this will be Grafia's biggest mistake, Hunter. Issei spoke while smiling towards Grafia and Surziches, making the two shiver, as they knew how dangerous this Issei is. Grafia summoned an ice spike at Issei, who only flipped backwards, and spoke while reaching to her side. No need to die so quickly, babe. Issei punched her in the stomach, which sent her flying. Grafia managed to recover as she thought. Such brute force. Grafia threw an ice beam at him as Issei dashed around the battlefield with grace, avoiding each strike as he came in front of her and backflipped. He soon carried her from the back with his hands and broke her spine. Grafia did not falter despite the immense pain, as she used ice to freeze his hands. With her having a moment to recover, she used healing magic to recover her strength. As Issei broke the ice, his hands were as good as new. Not bad. Issei complimented before dashing at Grafia again, who summoned a ton of ice spikes at all directions to disrupt Issei's path. Issei however wasn't phased as he tore through the ice spikes with his sword before closing the distance with Grafia, who looked surprised as Issei sliced her across the chest using a holy sword he had brought out. Ah! Grafia shouted in pain as she used this opportunity to once again try and freeze Issei's hands, but he did not let that happen. He immediately tried to go for another strike to take her down. Grafia was fearful of Issei's brutal tactics as she pulled her son closer to her, making him not see this. Yusaka did the same with Kunu, knowing full well on what this Issei is capable of. Hunter. Issei watched with amusement on knowing what is going to happen. Grafia released her aura, pushing him back, as Issei muttered. Annoying. Issei muttered to himself as he headbutted Grafia, which made her lose her grip on his wrist, which gave Issei the chance to kick her in the gut, which sent her back. Using the opening, Issei shattered the ice around his arm and sword with brute force, before turning back to Grafia, who rose back up from the ground. Grafia glared at him before raising her aura to the max, before covering her fists in ice and charging at him. Issei narrowed his gaze before swinging his sword vertically, which Grafia dodged, but she didn't expect the sword to touch the ground and cause a shock wave that forced her in the air. RageRevan snapped his fingers, knowing that the 4D experience may make some of the guests pass out, so he made it in such a way that they could feel the aura and not be that affected. They will be nothing but spectators in a fight between them. The audience, especially Nyx and Hades, were the most intrigued by this. They wondered if this Issei was up for hire. Issei saw the opportunity and jumped up in the air before following it up with a kick that sent her flying to the ground. She looked in horror as Issei fell soon. Issei followed it up with a series of punches that started to break her face, as blood and teeth was sent flying with every single punch, before following it up with a very strong haymaker which destroyed her face and skull. Grafia was passed out, with a face barely recognizable. Issei once again brought out his sword and was ready to decapitate her, killing her. Grafia was hyperventilating seeing this happen to her. Worse, it was someone she once deemed as a little brother doing all of this. Her family was even more fearful seeing this, as Surziches prayed for her wife's safety in that world. Geez, reminds me of a certain superhero gone rogue, Azazel muttered as RageRevan smiled, knowing who exactly he was talking about. However, a sphere of destructive energy was sent towards him, causing him to flip and evade the attack. He looked at the attacker, and it was Surziches, as he crouched to his passed out wife, horrified to see her state. He removed a phoenix tear and poured it on her. Grafia felt relieved that Surziches' counterpart saved her counterpart as well. She hated the fact that Issei was the one who brought her to this state. Fear and sadness were present in her looks. She still did not let Milika see her state for obvious reasons. Issei looked at the scene with a grin as he commented how romantic. Issei placed the sword he was wielding on his shoulder. Surziches angrily got up and glared at him with anger and hatred. You dared attack my wife. She is the one who attacked me first. Did you ask her why? Oh wait, no, cause you are arrogant. Surziches glared at him while releasing another sphere, as Issei narrowed his gaze before grinning. But worry not, I will do something worse to you than what I did to her. Issei dashed towards him. Surziches was surprised by his speed, but narrowly dodged a slash at his neck. but did receive a small cut on it. The Devil King immediately released a giant wave of destructive energy that destroyed the nearby buildings. But Issei managed to dodge last second before jumping around Surzich's at such a speed that even he couldn't keep up with his eyes. Those that knew the monster that was known as Surzich's were surprised to see Issei being able to fight up to this level. Even Surzich's himself was surprised, he was really powerful. So much so that he wondered what else this Issei was capable of. So fast. Surzich's thought before deciding to release a other wave of destructive energy that eliminated any spot that Issei could jump or hide in. The entire field was flat as Surzich's looked around but didn't find any trace of Issei. Just as he was able to breathe a sigh of relief, a massive cut, he sensed Issei coming in with a different sword, which was Ragnarok as Surzich's released another orb of destructive energy, but was shocked when the sword sliced through the orb like nothing which caused it to explode. Surzich's was blinded by the explosion which gave Issei the opening to summon a third different sword that carried the holy element. He used it to pierce him straight through the gut. Surzich's let out a massive scream of pain as he felt the holy element making his body burn from the inside out. Surzich's was stunned seeing how effective Issei was with his attacks, not many can land a hit on him. He knew that Issei was stronger than what many seemed, he was able to do this to the strongest queen, which meant he was far stronger than what he seemed. No Aria spoke in disbelief seeing how strong Issei is, as she exclaimed, "Nobody can defeat Ani-sama, there is no way. Believe it, Kool-Aid Princess. That is what you are seeing, and you will see what happens next. The fight is far from done. Hunter." Issei responded, as those that have seen what else Surzich's is capable of. Even Surzich's nodded knowing what else he is capable of, there is a reason he is in the top 10 strongest beings list. Ria shuddered wondering if there are more Isseis like this, otherwise she is done for. While, the sword was noted by the Angel faction, as Michael asked, "Hunter, the sword, what exactly it is? I have never heard of it." "Hunter?" Issei looked at him for a moment before responding, "It is Ragnarok, one of the strongest holy weapons I have in my arsenal. It allows me to slay a creature of darkness, which are vampires, devils and even Yaukes as well." The three races did not deny this, as holy weapons can harm them, some hope that he does not become their enemy, which was especially true for Yusaka and Kunu. Michael nodded at the answer, as the Angel faction couldn't deny the fact, as holy weapons were known to damage those races. Stomping his foot on his head to silence him, Issei pulled the sword out before storing it away. "How disappointing," Issei said to himself before turning around and walking away. "Killing you right now will cause me more trouble down the line. Take this as a lesson, you arrogant shitface." Surzich's looked down while he was thinking, "Am I arrogant?" Grafia kept her hand on him, despite the fact that even she was fearful of this iteration of Issei. She knew he was not to be messed around, no matter what happens. But that Issei was about to leave, but when he took a couple of steps he sensed something off and turned around as a massive shock wave erupted which sent Issei a bit back. Issei looked in front of him and saw Surzich's floating in the air with his aura flaring to the highest. His body wasn't visible anymore as what Issei could make out that it was the power of destruction in human shape. "You will end here." Surzich's voice sounded demonic as he turned to Issei before firing a beam of destructive energy that Issei was forced to dodge. A giant explosion erupted behind him as Issei glanced behind him before giving a small whistle. Surzich's was worried, this is a form that he only went when he was fighting the strongest of his opponents. He knew that the chances of Issei surviving this one are low to none, he hoped that this one is spared, but knowing what he did to his wife, the chances are very, very low. Hades gritted his teeth remembering his fight with him, although he was never beaten, the fact that a devil could reach this level angered and feared him, however he wants to believe that things would become better in the future. Persephone took a glance at him and sighed, knowing this to be true, he was not a fan of devils, even before her death, but tolerated them to some extent. She wondered if his hatred will go, and she hoped it does. "Not half bad, but still. It won't be enough to defeat me," Issei declared before taking out his holy sword and blitzing him again. However, the moment Issei's sword came into contact with Surzich's aura, Issei couldn't contact his sword, as the aura was repelling him back. "Though that's no good," Issei spoke with a worry as Surzich's saw this opportunity and decided to destroy him with nothing left. "You're finished." Surzich's roared before creating a small sphere and bringing it Issei, who felt that it was dangerous and quickly jumped back to dodge it. Quickly thinking, Issei summoned a small dagger-like weapon and stabbed the sphere that was heading its way. "No way, no one can cancel the ruin of extinction." Surzich's exclaimed with shock, as the attack was known to slay many people, as Hunter. Issei explained. "The one I used was the strongest of my treasures, and my most valuable, empty blade of nothingness, weapon is the empty blade of nothingness, which has the ability to disrupt and seal away any kind of supernatural enemy when stabbed by it. Even ultimate level gods will lose their divinity the moment their skin touches the blade." Surziches nodded in understanding, knowing if he can do that to God-class beings, then he can easily do that to even his stronger form. And, how did you even get this? Hunter. Issei looked at Biku as he spoke with a shrug. I was able to do so, alone, had to deal with a certain primordial to gain the blade, but I did it. Nyx's eyes perked when a primordial was mentioned, she hoped that it was not true. This caused Surziches to be surprised by this, as he responded he cancelled my ruin the extinct impossible. Surziches thought baffled as Issei just chuckled. Time to bring out the big guns. Issei stated before taking out a black chain and connecting one of the ends with a dagger. I can't come close or else I'll risk getting destroyed, I can't risk knowing my regeneration can keep up with the attack. So long distance it is. Chain of 1,000 miles, as the name implies it can be extremely long, seemingly 1,000 miles, but it is way longer than that. The chain itself is highly resistant against any kind of magic or power, as it was durable enough to withstand Surzich's destructive aura in his true form. Hunter. Issei explained as the audience nodded in understanding, they noted when combined with a dagger, it can be a deadly long-range weapon. Surziches wondered what would happen, which is the outcome of the fight. Issei swung the chain dagger as the chain magically kept increasing in length as it was heading Surziches, who planned to block with his power of destruction, but was shocked that his attack suddenly dissipated the moment it came in contact with the dagger. Using all of his strength. He barely dodged the attack, but he was quick to dodge it again as the chain dagger came down again another time. However, what Surziches didn't realize that Issei was grinning the whole time. As he held onto the chain. Gotcha bitch. Issei yelled as he tugged the chain as the chain that were surrounding Surziches quickly wrapped around his body. Surziches' eyes widened as the chains were capable of withstanding his aura of destruction as Surziches was suspended. No way, the audience muttered in disbelief as they saw how Issei was able to defeat Surziches. They knew that he was stronger than what he seemed, as they knew he was pretty stronger than many would seem. Surziches felt fear fighting against this Issei, knowing what he is capable of. Taking this chance, Issei dashed at him while unattaching the dagger with the chain and bringing it towards his chest and pushing it inside. Surziches' true form deactivated as his eyes widened in horror. What Surziches could barely get that out as Issei tore the dagger through his chest, creating a large cut on it before bringing it down and stabbing him in both thighs a couple of times. Lastly, Issei pulled out his dagger before changing it with a small butter knife as he stabbed him in the heart, making him cough up blood. Surziches soon passed out with his body half dead. Surziches was pale seeing this state of his, while the Grimoires hoped he survived the whole ordeal. Grafia was almost in tears seeing this state of her husband, as her own little brother is responsible for this. Even with all that power and abnormal talent. You were killed by a monkey like me. Issei said before looking down at him before doing the ultimate disrespect. Pulling down his pants a bit. Issei let out a relieved sigh before taking a big piss onto Surzich's barely living body. After a minute Issei was done and Issei tucked his junk away before grinning like maniac. The audience was stunned by this, they were speechless at the sheer disrespect Issei gave her. If Grafia was brutal, Surzich's was outright disrespectful. The only one that had no regrets was Hunter. Issei, who was grinning the whole time remembering this. I can't believe this, Sayard muttered seeing this as Sikvara added, he killed my father, destroyed the living daylights out of both Grafia and Lord Lucifer. He is really a monster, I dread what happens to my counterpart. All this was heard by Hunter. Issei, who smirked knowing what he did to Riser. This is your lucky day. As much as I want to kill you. I really don't want to deal with the backlash of having to deal with the entire devil faction. So until then, adios. Issei spoke with a grin before leaving Surziches for dead, the strongest devil king can easily survive this. Moments later, Grafia woke up and was pale seeing Surzich's state. Worse, he smelled worse, as she immediately brought out a phoenix tear to heal his condition. She feared the supernatural bounty hunter, hoping to not cross paths with him. Despite the bad smell, she managed to take Surziches back home to his office so that he can be cleaned. Grafia did not deny this, despite what many may see her as, she would have done this for her Surziches as well, with the latter being happy for this, as she hoped that he would have survived the whole ordeal. Hunter. Issei was quiet, despite the entertainment, he knew what happened next, his expression was not lost on some of the guests. Flashback ends. Surziches gritted his teeth in anger and fear, knowing the monster that Issei was known to be, as Grafia asked with fear, so what should we do? I am afraid we can't do much, Riaz has hired him to defeat Riser, and he will complete his mission at all costs, just like he killed Lord Aguirre's. Our goal is to not get in his way. Grafia widened her eyes as she retorted. But we can't let him be. Surziches looked at her and spoke. I am sorry Grafia, Riser's fate is sealed, you know what he did to us, right? It was a miracle that we are even alive. Surzich's words made Grafia reluctantly nod as he continued. I want to get Ryatan out of there, but I don't think with him around, it is possible. Grafia looked at him and reluctantly nodded. They only hoped for the best that would happen, and Riser survives. Back at the audience, Riser was shuddering as Claire was glaring at Riaz in anger. Not only was she going to ruin Issei, but also she would have done the same to Riser as well. Like Mary, even she hated her as well. Riaz and her peerage were shivering from the glare the older female phoenix was giving her. They knew she was not to be messed with. Back with Issei, he was looking at the orc, remembering on how he first met John. He looked at the boy who had come a long way since that had happened. Flashback begins. After Issei was outside, he suddenly got a call from Tiamat as she spoke. "Master, I have some news." "What happened?" Tiamat responded with a tone full of fear. "A portal opened up, out of which a blonde boy has arrived. His condition is very bad, and you are needed back." "Understood, I am on my way." Issei spoke seriously as he headed back to his mansion, as he hoped he would survive after this. Flashback ends. The audience at first wondered who this blonde boy was. Even Tiamat was the same, while Hunter, Issei and Revan were quiet knowing who he was. Azazel then spoke. "Wait a minute, is that John?" Azazel's words were responded by a nod from Hunter. Issei as he spoke. "Yep, when I first found the kid, his condition became bad. Worse were the people responded for this condition of his." Hunter. Issei spoke with a growl, as Revan spoke. The next viewing will be revealing what happened to John and how he came to this world. We will take a 5-minute break before continuing. The audience nodded as some wanted to ask questions to this Issei, but weren't sure if he would be getting the response to the question. That's it guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.